Well, hello everyone. We are back from recess and we are reconvening the Budget Committee meeting. It's 12:48 p.m. We have with us here in the chamber Councilmember Kia Aina as well as Councilmember Cordero. We are going to resume our departmental briefings. Next up is the Department of Permitting and Planning, whose communication can be found as Departmental Communication 191.
Good afternoon, Chair. Thank you for this opportunity, and committee members, council members. Dawn Apuna, Department of Planning and Permitting. So before we get into it, for context, I'd like to share how far we, DPP and this council, have come, where we're at, and what's ahead of us. Back in September 2022, when I was appointed acting director, we were faced with a 6+ month backlog in just the pre-screen, excessive code review times with a 27-year-old permitting software, still accepting paper plans and lacking basic SOPs. Monster homes haunted us, and the new short-term rental law, Ordinance 22-7, was only a few months old. Since that time, we've reduced the averages of pre-screen to 1 day, residential code review to 11 days, and commercial code review, which includes building, mechanical, and electrical, to less than 2 months. We've gone all e-plans with important upgrades to let owners know where the permit is, the comments to be addressed for approval, and how long the application has been with DPP, other agencies, or their design professionals. Monster homes are less of a monster, and since 2023, we have assessed hundreds of millions of dollars in short-term rental fines. In calendar year 2025 and fiscal year 26, we will further bring down permitting times, fully implement the Clarity permitting software system that will provide much needed automation and data reporting, as well as the CivCheck artificial intelligence for residential and commercial code review to better educate applicants on code compliance, and we will work to capture the millions of outstanding fines. The last 2 years have been spent identifying the issues and procuring the solutions, and in this current phase, we implement and execute those solutions. The support and understanding of the council throughout are greatly appreciated. And I want to personally thank my team and our hardworking staff who have gone above and beyond to facilitate these improvements while performing their important services to the public. I continue to believe that if we value DPP staff by providing training, guidance, and appropriate compensation, they will be and already are the positive transformation of the department. There's much more to be done, but we look forward to this fiscal year and realizing some fruits of our labor. DPP's goals this fiscal year, supported in part by our proposed budget, include continuing to improve permit times through full implementation of our modernization projects, filling vacancies, and adding capacity, public engagement and education to integrate and train users on the new technologies, investment in staff through training, salary adjustments, and renovation of physical workspaces, improved enforcement through increased fine collections and revised enforcement provisions, improved departmental organization and processes through streamlining and reorgs to effectuate position adds and create better functionality. Supporting housing development through pre-approved ADU templates and GIS mapping of housing development potential. With that, here is DPP's proposed budget. I can go to the next one. One more. Yeah. So for our summary of changes, for position count, a decrease of 1.3% due to 6 planners that were transferred over to the Office of Housing. This included the PAB administrator, planner, and some clerical staff, and then a reactivation of 1 civil engineering branch inspector. Salary and wages are up 4.3%. This is normal adjustment for projected step increases, etc. Current expenses decreased 9.6% due to adjustment under our cap to maintain the salaries and wages. Equipment, we have 3, last year it was 1 vehicle, and this year we're asking for 3 vehicles to replace very old vehicles. So overall, a budget of $38,602,461 amounts to a 1.1 increase in our overall budget. Nothing particularly new or different, as you can see, and approximately 75% is salaries for staff. Budget issues. So if we look at our budget issues, first we have under administration is the $5 million for affordable housing grants. And to give you an update on these Bill 7 projects, there have been a total of 66 projects. 12 were canceled, 28 are currently with the applicant, and 9 are with DPP under review. And we have since issued 17 of these Bill 7 projects. Just to give, and we made Bill 7 projects a priority, so when they come back for review or they are submitted, they go to the top of the line. So I think that's indicated in our numbers that most of the projects are back with the applicant and a minority are with DPP, because when we get it, we try to look at it quickly so we can get it back out to expedite that process. And as far as Bill 1 grants, there's a total of 5 projects that have been awarded grants, and notably 4 were awarded in the last 5 months. The total grants that have been allocated is $1,695,010, and that equals 164 total units. Next is $200,000 for DPP renovation prep relocation. So this is to help us as we get prepared for the renovations of our 5 floors at FMB, and to kind of get ready for some expansion and movement at Kapolei Hale. Next is $100,000 for cleanup services. And what this is meant to be is for when we have extremely hazardous properties where we've kind of exhausted all potential enforcement, but we realize there's a clear and urgent hazardous condition that threatens health and safety, then it gives us money to do things such as board up properties, demolish, of that sort. So, for example, in the past year, we spent $60,000 in savings for 1421 Pensacola Street in order to demolish the 2 structures on the property, and to remove all the rubbish there. Similarly, for 2058 Alamahamoi, we were able to work with HPD to clear the property of vagrants and to board up the property to ensure that they didn't come back. So the main goal for this money is the main goal is that we just, in very extreme circumstances, we have that money ready, but we believe that property owners are responsible for taking care of their property, and the city is not in the business of cleaning up properties, just when there's a very urgent need to fix it, or to make it so it's not a threat to the community. Next, we have $107,000 for 2 vehicles for administration. We have very old vehicles, some that you have to roll down the window, so that gives you an idea of how old they are. And then customer service, they also require a vehicle. And these vehicles are used for going out into the community, doing site visits, etc. Moving on to vacancies. So current vacancies, of the total 394 positions, we have 99 vacancies. The number of vacancies expected to be filled by July 1st is 8. The number of vacancies expected to be filled during fiscal year 26 is 25, and we have 0 vacancies that may be abolished. Just to give you an idea of where these vacancies are throughout our department, the 99 total, at the top we have 29 planners and then 21 inspectors across the board, 19 engineers. Those are the engineer positions that we asked for a couple of years, and we have struggled to fill those. And then building plans examiners, we have 2 vacancies. We don't have a hard time necessarily with vacancies, but it is a very low-paying position. And so how are we addressing vacancies? We are attending job fairs. We are conducting one-day hiring events. We've recently begun social media. We have a DPP Instagram, and we're streamlining interview and selection processes. We've also believe strongly in salary adjustments. We recently got a planner shortage just last week to match the state's planner shortage, and we're very happy about this. We've gotten a lot of positive feedback about that. And that's thanks to HR. We've also been working with HR on engineer salary adjustments, which also I think is promising in trying to recruit those positions. And we would like to also increase salaries for inspectors and, again, building plans examiners, because we need to invest in our staff. We are also, I think, addressing vacancies by setting up the training that shows applicants that there's definitely a growth and development path at DPP. So we've hired a training specialist who's creating our training program. They were hired in August. We have ICC training for inspectors and plans examiners, and leadership and succession planning. So estimated overtime, funds, and hours. What is overtime being used for? So as you can see, building and customer services is much higher than the others, and that's because it's directly related to the building permit backlog. Building is commercial building permit review, and customer services is a residential review, so that staff has been working hard, putting in overtime to bring the backlog down. Also, overtime is used for some staff who are helping with implementation of modernization projects such as Clarity, Acuity, e-plans, upgrades, and SIF checks. So this takes a significant amount of time and effort out of staff's normal duties. All right, I guess so there's hours as well as the actual projected number funding that we're asking for overtime. Moving to revenue. As you can see, it's pretty much flat for building permit revenue, and then some increase overall, but I actually think that this is a very conservative projected estimate of our revenues. And I believe we may realize a much greater increase in revenue due to certain factors. First, improved fines collections. We have this huge amount of fines that we need to pull in, and we're working on various efforts to do so. As mentioned in our intro, prior to the short-term rental ordinance 22-7, we had assessed a very small amount of fines, but since the enactment of that ordinance, we have assessed hundreds of millions of dollars in short-term rental fines. And so now we are shifting our focus on capturing those fines. I'd also like to add that, so there's hundreds of millions of short-term rental fines, and only in the last 2 years, 23 and 24, there's about 225 million of those fines that are in the ZBA process. So until they make it through that appeals process, we aren't able to capture those. But just to give you an idea of why some of it we can't get to, or we can't go after at this point. And a year ago, we had a backlog of 3,000 NOOs, or notices of order, awaiting drafting and issuance in our code compliance branch. But today there's 30 in queue. This has been an issue of capacity in that branch. We've had like 2 out of, I believe it's 6 or 7 total positions, and we are working hard to fill those positions. Also, notably, the prior administration's policy was to settle for 5% of fines for compliance purposes. This administration's policy has been to collect 100% of those fines unless there are proven extenuating circumstances. Again, vacancies and adding capacity is really important to this fines code compliance branch. We're also working on streamlining code compliance with the implementation of our acuity fines processes. And another new program that we'll start to do or effort is for liens valued at 50% or more of the property, we will automatically move for foreclosure. And I think that kind of gives some understanding of what our policy will be on foreclosures. The Clarity permitting software will help to speed up and automate after a set number of days. For example, the Clarity will automatically have the issuance of the NOV, and then after so many days, 30 days, issuance of the NOO, and then automation to lien or to collections, as opposed to currently it's a manual process. We are also going to work to better integrate our fines process with our collections agency, Argonne. I think there's some duplication, and we're still working out how we can best work together to be effective and efficient. I also think that if it makes sense, we may need to add additional services from the collections agency, or maybe an additional collections agency in itself. One of the issues for fines collection challenge that we run into is good service of notice. And so we're working harder on making sure that we provide good notice so that it's not challenged later on and we can still get those fines. So one thing that we will be doing is we're going to start providing publication of notices in the newspaper, and that will kind of wipe out a major lists of outstanding violators. And lastly, we are working on consolidating our enforcement provisions that are scattered among 15 different ROH chapters. For example, grading, building, zoning. And so just having one chapter that it provides a more uniform enforcement, including fines, collection, I think will help to streamline the process. Going back to the STR fines, so the ZBA backlog, I know, Chair, that you have talked about this, and you made a really great suggestion about adding an additional board. And I think we might have some issues as far as a charter being able to do that, but we do think we can immediately have the board appoint a hearings officer to set agendas and to hear minor motions, and that will help to unclog some of the agendas that are out there. As you know, we have a 2-year backlog in ZBA, but that's one of the efforts that we can do immediately. And then other sources or improvements in revenue collection. This is a small one, but we'll soon, with the Clarity system, be able to accept online payments, which wasn't necessarily the case. And then our ability to more quickly and predictably issue building permits may increase the overall number of building permit applications that are submitted. I think when people realize that it's not so long and difficult of a process, that they're just like, yeah, I can just put in my permit rather than not submit for permits. Okay, moving on to federal funds. We have 0 federally funded positions, and we do not and does not have budget operation. We do not have budgeted operations with federal funds. Okay, next. And then lastly, for CIP, we are asking for $4.4 million to renovate all 5 floors at FNB, which are in need of much needed update and to make efficient space for hires. We are in planning and design and look to begin construction in fiscal year 2026. With that, I am here for any questions. Thank you.
Okay, members, questions. Maybe we'll start with the committee chair who has jurisdiction over this, Councilmember Kiana.
Thank you. Thank you, Director, for actually a very good presentation. You know, you had so many really good updates, both relating to process and policy, separate from the budget PowerPoint that you had. I really wish that could be crystallized because as the department that probably gets the most complaints with regard to each of our districts, it's good for us to be fully informed of things beyond the budget and the process so that we could better inform everybody, about what's going on, because I really did like it. So number one, I just wanted to commend you and your department, because even if we continue to get daily complaints, we all need to contextualize it against the backdrop of where we were when the administration first started. So it's not measured improvement, it's significant improvement. And I know you know that there's still a long ways to go because a lot of people are still in the queue and they're still seeing, they're still suffering from PTSD of the process. But eventually, once that backlog is back to normal, and I think then people will have a better idea of whether or not this improvement is sustainable. So I just wanted to say that. I did want to thank you for actually very substantive updates that you've provided to us. One, of course, and this is for my colleagues as well, Department Communication 198, dated March 4th. That was at the request of Budget Chair Dos Santos Tam at a zoning hearing regarding a report on the feasibility of splitting up the department. It actually has good information in it, and we might want to have an informational briefing at the next committee. But this is just good education for all of us. So thank you for that. Thank you also for your March 7th letter regarding Bill 19. I think we all are looking at ways in how applicants don't have to go through the process again. And this was an attempt and was recommended by the Building Industry Association of Hawaii. But thank you for that follow-up. And of course, processes is not just about DPP processes. It's about applicants and agents who work hard to advocate for their, for the applicants or families, and do a good job at it, because as your data shows, very often the holdup is not within DPP or another agency, but with the applicant or their team, correct? So I need to let you know your March 11th letter to me regarding an agent for an SMA project that has consistently been very disrespectful to your staff and has been misrepresenting the facts of the agencies, as well as a lot of the requirements during the process, is well noted. I need to let you know, and because this is something I'm dealing with now with regard to a pending SMA. So I just wanted to tell you that. I'm gonna go through just during your nomination hearing and the full council, as well as the zoning committee, I already asked you a lot of questions, but because it's related to the budget, I'm gonna go to that, okay? So the first, of course, is the agricultural planner. I am gonna be putting in an amendment, and I hope that you will support the establishment of an agricultural planner. Do you agree?
I agree.
With regard to the Oahu Historic Preservation Commission, we recently had a hearing with regard to if it's doing its job. And I just wanted to make sure, because I'm getting confused with what you guys say in public and what your staff is telling me with regard to whether or not you currently have all of the resources available to make sure that this process is going to be robust. Do you have all the necessary funds for each of the positions that you need for this commission?
No, we don't. So what we do have funded is the Planner 6 as the administrator of the commission, Planner 5 for the archaeologist, and Planner 4 for the architectural historian. But what we don't have funded is a Planner 4 who will help to review the building permits as part of the historical review, and the off assistant 3 who will help.
Okay,
Yeah.
I think we had that. I had no idea that it was related to the Oahu Historic Commission. I thought it was just in general for DPP. So those 2 positions are for the commission?
Yes.
Okay, that was not made clear.
Okay.
Okay.
I apologize.
So thank you. That's why I'm having this question. So I will make sure that we get that in. On the short-term rental enforcement front, critically important, and you threw out a lot of numbers, which is good to hear, that part of the reasons you don't have all the funds is because of pending claims before the Zoning Board of Appeals, correct? So with regard to you getting the appropriate people in there, do you have sufficient funds first to have a good team? And second, do you have the appropriate physical bodies in position?
Yes, those are vacancies that we have in our code compliance branch that we need to fill in order to fully execute. I don't think we need more positions at this time, but we will continue to monitor.
Okay, but my other part of my question was physical bodies. You do not have physical bodies.
No.
How many physical bodies do you need?
We need about 4 more. 4 more.
Okay, and are you guys doing a good job?
Yes.
To try to recruit?
Yes, and then again, the new planner shortage, these are planner positions, I think will be very helpful in getting those positions filled.
Okay, and you know, I'm being kind of selfish here, but it's not just about improving the quality of life of our neighborhoods for bad actors, right?
Right.
But it's also generating revenue. You can make plenty of money. You have $250 million pending before the Zoning Board of Appeals, right?
Right,
So
right.
anyway, I just want to make sure that you're on track for that. I do have a question regarding building permits, and as was revealed during a recent zoning hearing, a applicant for an SMA for a family, they are on deadline to have their permit approved by June 30th, which we all know is a tall order. And in looking at the ROH, section 18-4.5, I guess I realized that it wasn't just limited to shoreline erosion SMAs, but it's also to other permits. My question to you is, given that, should we consider, do you believe that we should provide more time and potentially amend this for up to 6 months? And if your answer is no, I guess I want to make sure that with regard to the order of consideration of permits, if everyone did everything that they were needed, that you give them due consideration so that they're not penalized.
Yes, I agree with the latter, that if they have been diligent and it's maybe because of something on the approval side, I think we have the discretion and that would make sense on a case-by-case basis to allow extension.
How?
I think there is some,
My understanding that this statute was, so, because if you're
Yes,
telling me
for building
that, then I would do it to the underlying SMA application that's pending and going to full council on the 19th.
yes, let me speak with staff again about this to give you a clear answer. I don't want to misspeak.
Sure,
at
and
this
the reason
point.
I'm saying this is because I'm dealing, and this is one of my constituents, by the way.
Yes.
So, again, if you have that discretion, that would be my preference.
Okay.
And I've already talked to Chair Waters. We normally don't make such amendments on the floor, but given the circumstances for this application, we need to consider it. If you don't have that wiggle room, then I want you to explore whether or not we need to, it would be a technical amendment to this underlying ordinance
Okay.
for maybe 6 months. And then we should consider that. Then I want you to think about that, okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, because I don't think we're here to hurt people if they've gone through the process, but this 1 year, a time frame when permits take a long time, I think might be unfair.
Okay.
And with that, on the top of the, you said Bill 7 projects, top of the line, so I heard that. Can you give me examples of other projects which would be top of the line? I remember getting communications from people whose houses burned down. Would they be expedited in their permit process?
Um,
I just wanted to know if you had criteria for who gets expedited.
so who gets expedited? It's usually housing, like housing projects, affordable housing projects, government projects, solar. Those are kind of the top ones. We do have the ability for some applicants to, if there's an emergency, if they needed to work on, do work without the approval of the permit, and they can move forward because it's an emergency situation.
Okay, and you would consider fire to be in that category,
I
correct?
think we'd have to look at each of the, it's kind of case by case. But it potentially, yes.
Oh, okay. I don't know how it could be potentially, because if someone's house had burned down and they need a home, I think that that should be considered. Anyway, thank you for that. And my last question for now is regarding your human resources recruitment. How is it going with regard to your recruitment of engineers in the appropriate places that they are needed?
So as I had mentioned, yeah, since we got the 15 positions, what was it, almost 3 years ago, it's been very difficult. We still have vacancies there, but as DHR has helped us to get those salaries up, that's helped. I think in the current climate with the federal government making cuts, there's some opportunity there as well. So we do see applications and we continue. I have my supervisors be at all of the hiring events and really I'm pushing them to get involved and to really sell it like this is a great place to work.
Okay.
But yeah.
Okay, and because I'm looking at a lot of opportunities, I'm glad that the mayor and both the director of human services is prioritizing recruitment of federal employees. But I think within each of your departments, especially for the technical skill set that is very difficult to find, I think I just highly recommend you do extra, because you have a potential opportunity. And right now, a lot of people their morale is so low, they may be hesitant to come out. So I think aggressive recruitment might be needed. That's all I wanted to say. So thank you.
I agree.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just real quickly, I really appreciate Council Member you holding the updates on DPP throughout the last couple of years. I know it did start, Council Member Tupola had the initial one at EMLA, and then you took it on for the last couple of years, and I think maybe Council Member Cordero might take over those updates. But we provide a lot of good information in that committee, and we're thinking we want to provide it to all the council members who aren't part of that committee, because I think it really does give a good idea of everything that we're trying to do and the progress that we're making. So thank you.
That's good to hear. I would recommend those, what do you call those, dashboards? Because that is probably the most requested riser request that we all get.
Right.
I think it would be in your interest to perhaps have a dashboard on your website to show where you were in 2022 versus where you are now, to give hope to people.
Yes.
And again, as I stated, I thought you did a good really report, but it's not here. And sometimes I'm not as good listener as I'd like to be. And you have had a lot of good things in there. And so hopefully in some way we might be able to get an update of your accomplishments in written form. Anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Cordero. No, Councilmember Tupola. Sorry, we're going to go the other way.
Thank you. Hello, Director. Thank you for your update. And Councilmember Kiaina for hitting a lot of key points. I wanted to know in regards to the backlog, a lot of times, and I do appreciate all the updates at the committee, and thank you for acknowledging, the start of it, because really that's kind of how we try to hold ourselves accountable and as well showcase the progress in your department. But I'm concerned that we refer a lot to the dates, but like, what is the number? So like, what is the number of permits in the backlog right now?
So, I I had that number and I can't remember the exact number. I know that when we reported to you back 2.5 years ago, it was like 6,000 in the residential. And I wish I had that number today, but it is definitely come down. So I will get that to you. Yeah.
That would be good. And the other number that I'm really interested in is the amount of people waiting for that certificate of occupancy. More recently than not, I've kind of heard a lot more about that part, meaning that they've kind of made it through. So I know that you were really focused on the pre-screen with the bot, which is great. And then of course, I'm speaking of like the code review area, but then that part where they've kind of made it all the way through and they're waiting for that inspection, the certificate of occupancy. If you could pull that number as well, because I'm concerned that, you do have a lot of inspectors, but what is their caseload? I mentioned it in the other hearing that the one inspector we've been working with in Kapolei is like in the thousands of that he has to go inspect and try to complete the certificate of occupancy. But I would like some accurate numbers from yourself and, brainstorm through some strategies.
Sure. Yes, I think that's a great idea. Thank you.
Perfect. The other one that was brought up that I also think we might need to, and I know that you briefly brought up that, Chair Waters suggested another board, but I did meet with a few of the ZBA commission members, and they said over 90% of their cases are all short-term rentals. And I do believe that from the time that the bill was passed until the time we modified it, which you were part of that, right? We modified it to kind of like make the requirements a little bit easier for people to comply with and to bring the correct documents. I want to say there was quite a bit of people that got caught up in that little section, but in the event that we can't really make another commission and we have this huge backlog of which the majority are not the building and zoning, it's just talking about like short-term rentals that are appealing some fines that they got. What do you think would be a good way to kind of like cut down on those so that it's not as overwhelming, ones that might be like low-hanging fruit?
Yeah, so maybe there's other opportunities with that hearing officer. And then if we can get, more than one hearing officer to more the minor or limited scope of the violation. So that might be an option. So we'll look into that and see if that will help as well.
Yeah, and I was going to suggest, in the hearings that we've had, there have been a few experts that have come forward that are legally registered. They kind of like sorted their way through the paperwork and they're a little bit more expert at it. Whereas I feel like the Zoning Board of Appeals, a lot of them are very good at what they do, but they don't really specialize in the short-term rental law. So I'm going to email you some of those contacts because I think it really is like a specialty person, right? A specialty person that understands it kind of in and out, can sort out these cases and kind of put them in different categories so that we can get through it a little bit faster. I think lastly, I just wanted to bring up, when you talked about the Bill 7 projects, I appreciate the breakdown of it. And so you said to date we've issued 17, is that correct?
Yes.
And that 9 are with DPP. I think you said something like 16 were canceled. Is that the correct number?
12 were canceled.
Wow. And then was that at the request of the applicant, or how did the cancellation happen for those ones?
So I'm sorry, I don't have the details, but it either is by the applicant themselves, or if it was completely idle for 365 days, right? How we would normally deal with the building permit. So it's either of those, but I can find out exactly what the breakdown is of those 12.
Yeah, I just wanted to know if there was some part of the process that was maybe just too discouraging that they came out of. We've talked about that in other departments like clean water, natural land funds, like the application was too horrendous. People don't want this, particular loop that they had to jump through. So they just exited out of the application system. So if there is any feedback that we can get there, that's all I wanted to know. Is if there's a cancellation for something that we could kind of address or amend inside the application, let's just look at it.
Okay.
And then I think in regards to the EM7s, and I know that that's kind of in the weeds, but I know you guys' reorg required like a little bit of like intermediary tiers that you guys were putting in so that there wasn't like one person at this EM whatever level over like a million other people. So is that something that is in your budget, or is it going to be a reorg that we can look through at a different time? I thought that what we spoke about when I met with you and your deputies was super key, because if there's managerial issues that you guys really need to address in order to be effective, whether it's the ASO or whatever, I just wanted to know when we could see kind of what that's going to look like.
Yes, no, that is an important part of what we want to move forward on. It isn't in our current budget, but certainly through our reorgs and in the subsequent budget, we would ask for those EM7s, and just so that everyone knows what we're referring to. It's to be kind of a sub-level manager to our division chiefs who can really help to provide administrative work and succession planning.
So you're saying that you guys are kind of still in the conceptual mode and that maybe in next year's budget you're included? Because, yeah, I didn't know if that was something that you thought was imminent, or is it something you guys are still thinking through?
I think understanding our ceiling and all of the limitations, it is definitely important, but I think we'd had to wait for next budget. It's not in our current budget.
Okay, looking forward to that, but thank you for the insight on that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, back to Councilmember Cordero, and then we're going to go this way.
Thank you, Budget Chair. Hi, Director.
Hello.
So I would like clarification on what you were sharing about the Kapolei Hale. I don't know if it's expansion or is it renovation?
So at Kapolei Hale, I believe ENV, they'll be vacating and moving to a different facility, and there's kind of this movement among the different departments. So DPP is going to get more space out in Kapolei Hale, which we're really excited about because we need space. And if anything, maybe to help with furniture and other thing in that expanded space, but also shifting staff while we do renovations at FMB. So it's this whole juggling act of renovating FMB, expanding space in Kapolei, and then moving staff in between because, you know, we're gonna have to use space for renovation while we still need to do our work.
Thank you. And which division is that currently at Kapolei Hale?
We have inspectors as well as some more of our permits issuance branch.
Oh, that's great. Great to hear. Are you looking to expand the same amount of the same divisions that are at Kapolei Hale, or are you going to be adding more divisions such as maybe site development to Kapolei Hale?
Yeah, I think one of the factors that will play into who goes out there is for work-life balance. Certain staff that feel that, you know, they live on the west side, and we think that that's a good way that people they don't have to worry about coming to town through traffic. So it's going to be a process to make sure that all divisions have an opportunity, and we're going to have to just fit everything as best we can.
Okay, thank you. That's great. I was just wondering if maybe we could just have all the like maybe half the permitting office there, and so that a lot of the development that's happening on that side will be able to just go straight to Kapolei Hale as opposed to Honolulu
Yeah,
or FMB.
So that's correct. Even now, we have PIB at FMB, and then we have a smaller staff at Kapolei. That will remain, but the added space, it will probably be other divisions.
Okay, thank you. My second question is relating to there's of course different lapses that we see every year, but I noticed that there's the 64.6% lapse in administration from the FY24 to FY25, and then there's different lapses through different divisions. And do you know what factors contributed to a lot of the different lapses in the divisions?
Yeah, so administration, much of that lapse was the Affordable Housing Bill 7 Bill 1 grants. We also, so when FRF money, we received it, we actually try to maximize FRF and not use operational funds. There was a lot of travel that we weren't able, like conference travel was canceled, so that lapsed. There was we needed to upgrade computers in different divisions, but we realized we had to do a department-wide purchase, so that was some of the lapsing. And there were some consultant contracts that fell through because staff had left under planning division. So that's, and then some other projects like that we were able to, rather than have a consultant, we were able to do in-house. And then, yeah, conferences, the HACBO conference, which is like a code, they didn't have their conference that year, so that money lapsed as well. But that's kind of generally some of the reasons for lapsing.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Wire.
Thank you, Chair. Mahalo, Director,
Aloha.
for being here and all the work. I just had a couple questions. So the additional cleanup services, that's in administration CE, current
Yes.
expense, or?
Yeah, it's an under our administration.
Okay, so if you need more, it shouldn't be a problem to use more.
Yes.
Okay. No, I think thank you for identifying that because I think that's really useful. And then the urban infill grant program. So you're saying 17 had permits issued? Is that what I heard?
Yes.
Okay.
17 issued.
And then the actual grant amounts, 5 have received
Yes.
grants?
Yeah.
Okay.
5 applied and 5 received grants. So they're probably, so when the grant, in order to be able to apply for the grant, you need the CO. So they're probably somewhere before the CO.
Okay, so that's 1.6 million to date.
Yes, close to 1.7.
1.7, okay. Do we expect any more to be expended before or through June?
I would have to check at where they're at. But yeah, they would have to be building and constructing at this time.
Okay, because I guess I'm just curious, which I'm totally on board with, but I know if it's the same amount that's gone in, do we anticipate a greater number or amount of funds being, pushed out this upcoming fiscal year?
So I think the 5 million, it's based on the projects that are still, that I talked about. So I think that projection is about right. If we get more applications, maybe we need more, but I'm pretty confident with the 5 million.
Okay, do we think it's feasible to have the pre-construction grant program up and running for the upcoming fiscal year?
Yeah.
I know that's ongoing, but I just welcome input because that's a question that's come up a few times and I think will continue to come up.
Yes, I think we'd have to, I mean, it's always a capacity issue, but we would try to get it up and running. But I think the latest versions, that we're talking about are very helpful and it kind of clearly lay out what the requirements are. So we'll look at that and see what we need to do to have a schedule of establishing that.
Okay, I appreciate that. And then I know we said there's the adjustments for planners and engineers, and we're waiting on inspectors
and building plans examiners.
Yeah, when do we expect that to come?
So we're working with HR because it's not, so for inspectors and building plans examiners, it's not necessarily a shortage. For the inspectors, actually, construction inspectors got a shortage a couple years ago, and because all of our other inspectors, 100, let me see. Anyways, the majority of them didn't get that shortage because they don't have construction in their title, and we feel that all the other ones should get the same lift in salary. So it's kind of a weird, it's not a specific shortage, but it should be equal pay across the board because they really do very similar work. It's just different subject matter. So we're trying to work with HR to figure out how do we raise that. And then as far as building plans examiners, we need to figure out a way because it's not a shortage, but the starting salary for a building plans examiner is $41,808 a year. And I mean, they are the ones that really grind it out for the single 2-family building permits. And for a while, I've been trying to get this salary adjustment for them. And I don't know what the vehicle is, but yeah, that's something that we would like to address.
Okay. I think there's probably agreement at the council on that as well. So I think anything we can support with, I mean, I think we can also have the conversation with DHR and see whatever can facilitate it. What I'm hearing is that whatever adjustments occur, your proposed budget would be able to accommodate it in the upcoming fiscal year if we reach.
So for the planner shortage, and building inspectors and building plans examiners, we do have a calculation. We are using salary savings for a lot of these different positions, and but it's going to be very close. And even understanding the projection for the inspectors and the building plans examiners, we might not have enough in what we've proposed here.
Okay. Do you know what amount that would be? Not to put you on the spot, but
I do. So for the, I think for the planner shortage, it's about $325,000.
okay.
And then for the inspectors, it's about 1.6, 1.2? Oh, around 1.25 for the inspectors. And then for building plans examiners, what was it? About $105,000.
Okay. That's extremely helpful. Last question, and not to belabor it, but just because it's come up in the community and will continue to, with the self-certification program, do you have any updates? I know it's come up recently, but just wanted to ask, because I know I'll be asked about it after today as well.
Yeah, and then we apologize for the delay. Their staff is definitely working on it. There's some web page that needs to be set up and some online testing and training, and they're working on that, and we're hoping by the end of this month.
Okay, that's wonderful news, because we're already halfway through March, so end of March. Okay, perfect. Mahalo. Thank you, and thank you again for your whole team and all the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay. Chair Waters, any questions? Okay. I have several questions. I wanted to start with the performance metrics. I note that there's only 2 performance metrics listed on in the mayor's executive summary on page A33. Do you have other metrics? Well, we're going to send a letter to ask for a few more metrics that we can utilize in assessing DPP's performance. We hear constantly that things are improving, and I think that that should be shown in more metrics. To that point, I am concerned about some of the data that we are being reported, including on this metric sheet. It said in FY24, commercial permit time increased from 320 days to 429 days, and residential permit issuance time in FY24 went from 209 days to 316 days. Are those numbers accurate
For
FY24?
I believe they are, with a caveat that our POSSE data system isn't the best as far as data. So it's,
Okay.
yeah.
Knowing that, I'll note that at the January 11th, 2024 P&E committee meeting, it was reported that the commercial permit issuance time was 411 days. In May 2nd, 2024 meeting, it was reported it was 407 days. And at the end, it was 429 days. And so that implies that at the end of FY24, there was a slowdown. Are those numbers accurate?
Yeah, and I think I'm just kind of figuring out, because I'm not great at knowing fiscal year versus
Yeah, I know,
calendar year.
it's confusing for everybody. But I guess the point that I'm trying to get at is I want to make sure that the numbers that we're getting are indeed accurate, because you come before the P&E committee every so often to provide these snapshot updates.
Yeah.
Okay.
So can I just,
Yeah.
I think part of that, there was a big surge in applications in 2023, right? Like we had 20,000 versus a normal or average for 15 to 16,000 per year. So that may have contributed to it. And then when we report generally to the planning committee about our updates on the residential code review or the commercial code, that's just what is 100% within our control. So that's a smaller number. And what we're experiencing now, I think that when the backlog shifted from pre-screen to our code review, and then there's other agencies, but I think it's shifting to the applicants. I imagine that they now have these big stacks of building permits that they need to work on and get back to us. So even though our time has shrunken, theirs may have expanded, and that's included in the overall permitting from application to approval. Like that's what we're talking about when we're talking about 400 days.
Okay. And similarly, with the residential permit issuance time, on the metrics, it said that the average at the end of FY24, so June 30th of 2024, it was 316 days for residential permit issuance. A month before that, May 2nd, 2024, it was reported that the average time was 197 days. And so that's a big difference. Is that explained by the time it's with the applicant versus with DPP?
Yeah, no, so again, that's the entire time, and it could be, I mean, I think so in 2024 calendar year, that's when the code review really came down. Before that, I can see if they're probably still extended times, but that overall time, yes, includes the applicant's time with the applicant and multiple reviews if there's multiple cycles.
Okay. And so it was reported to us that May 2nd, 2024 P&E meeting that the average permit issuance time was 197 days. It was reported to us in November. When you came before us in November, there was a chart that had the residential code review time, and it had 187 days for residential code review in May of 2024. So that implies that there's 10 other days between the difference in issuance time versus residential code review time. What are those extra 10 days?
Oh, maybe it's approved to issue. If it's not,
Okay.
yeah, we show the pre-screen, and then we show the code review, and then approved to issue.
Okay. In terms of the vacancies, you mentioned that there are 8 positions that you plan to fill by July 1st, 2024. What are those 8 positions?
I don't think we have specifically laid out. I mean, we have a lot of vacancies, and just the overall effort that we're having.
But this
all of
is
our,
just a guess.
I think it's a good estimate.
Yeah. And the reason why I asked that is in the FY24 budget, you reported exactly the same numbers.
Yeah, I think, honestly, Chair, it's hard for us to say we are just constantly trying to hire. So it's hard to say this is the number. But I don't know, maybe part of it is based on the overall process and everything that needs to be lined up in order to do that.
And I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
I'll note that we requested that all departments submit a document showing the number of vacancies that they proposed filling by FY26, and I think it's 41 positions. And so we just want to, again, going back to the metrics, be able to track
Yes.
the department's success. Because again, this year in your snapshot, you reported 99 positions currently vacant as of that snapshot. Last year's one was 100 positions. So that implies that there was a net of 1 new warm body within DPP.
Yes.
Is that the case?
It is, and I think I tried to explain this in a prior committee hearing. We do so much to hire 26, and then we have 25 exiting. It's difficult.
I understand that, and I do sympathize. But part of the tough medicine is
Mm-hmm.
acknowledging this.
Yes.
I'll note that in the FY26 budget, it proposes 5 less appropriated positions.
Mm-hmm.
What were those 5 positions that were cut? It went from, I think, 389 to 384, something like that?
Yeah, so for the current, right? Yeah, so those are the ones that we shifted to the Office of Housing.
Okay, got it.
PAB.
Speaking of Office of Housing, right now, DPP administers the Bill 1 grant program.
Yes.
Is that a function that you would like to see moved, or would you like to keep it in DPP? And can we do it with the new fiscal year?
That would be fine.
Okay. I want to now turn to fine collection.
Yes.
Again, you mentioned that in the mayor's executive summary, it mentions bringing in $31.6 million in fines in FY26. That compares to 31.4 projected last year and 29 projected in FY24. But we recently heard about several weeks ago that very little of that actually got collected. So if we're not actually collecting this revenue, that means there's a gap of potentially $30 million that the city's budgeting for and anticipating, but not ever getting. So that's difficult for us.
Yes, and we understand that. We agree that and again, we're moving from the phase and getting the capacity to do this, but definitely focus on capturing those fines. So we understand how that looks, and we're going to do everything we can this year to get that 30 million plus more. I think we can get more.
Okay. I'm going to turn to second round questions if any members have second round questions. Councilmember Cordero?
Okay, I'm trying to formulate this in my head. Okay, thank you, Chair. Hi, Director. My question is in relation to, I know that we're talking about sidewalk dining, and I'm just thinking about this because Councilmember Kia Aina brought up having DTS do enforcement for parking. And since if we are looking at giving other agencies the ability to do other enforcement, I was wondering if we do so, then do you think we would be able to take DPP out of the sidewalk dining process?
Yes.
Cool, thanks.
Good question. Any other round two questions? Chair Waters.
Thank you. And I apologize, I came in late, so you may have already answered these questions, but I'm just looking at your vacancies. You anticipate filling 33 out of the 99 within the next, well, by the end of fiscal year 2026?
Yes.
Could you identify, maybe in writing, you don't have to do it today, but positions that you don't think you're likely to fill within the near future? I'm trying to find money, and you've heard me say this to other departments, but trying to find money that we could use to help defray some of the cost of the sewer fees. So I'd rather not do it. If you could identify which ones you're probably not going to fill would be helpful, just for this year, and then we can come back next year and revisit that, if at all possible. That'd be super helpful.
Sure. We'll
Thank
do
you.
that. Thank you.
Okay. Members, any other round two questions? Okay, if not, I have a few more. I appreciate that the number of NOOs, notices of order, has significantly gone down. I mean, I think that you mentioned that there's only 30 in the queue, is that right?
Yeah, so that, and I want to be clear about what that means. It's just that when it goes from the inspectors and the inspectors say, okay, it needs to go to fines, then it moves to the code compliance branch away from the inspectors. So that was, a box of 3,000 and now there's about 30. So they're moving it, the code compliance branch is able to take it and then create the NOO.
So that's 3,000 that were with inspectors and are now with code compliance.
Yeah, or they were with code compliance, but code compliance wasn't able to draft up those NOOs quickly enough.
Now, the next step beyond an NOO is a lien, and NOOs that exist longer than 90 days are supposed to be converted to liens. Is that the correct process?
I don't understand. Yeah, I'm not sure.
I guess, what is the next step after an NOO?
It would be a lien. Yeah.
It was reported to us back in 2023 that for all of the NOOs that existed in 2022, so this is years ago, it would take between 48 and 73 years to clear the backlog of NOOs being converted to liens. My concern is that if all we do is issue NOOs and then do nothing, and they sit, whether it's with the inspectors or with code compliance, these bad actors are never going to get the message. So what can we do to, now that those have been put into code compliance, get some of these out the door, get some of these bad actors?
Right, so I appreciate that. The code compliance branch, which we're beefing up, is going to be able to take on more of that and draft liens for that. But then the automation within the Clarity system is going to help so much with the drafting. Everything is manual right now, so that's going to speed it up. So I think that those are two major advancements, as well as us looking at the list and everything that is, like I said, more than 50%. The fines are more than 50% the value of the property. That will be our indication to automatically lien. Then it goes. So I think all of these different things, it will show a faster rate.
You mentioned that it's the administration's policy to only allow 50% to be waived of the fees. Is that right?
So previously it was 5%. No, 95% waived.
95% waived. What is it now?
It's no waiver unless there's clear extenuating circumstances.
Is that policy in ordinance, or is it simply an administration?
It's an administration policy.
Would the department have any objection for us codifying that process in ordinance?
No, I don't think so. since we do it already.
Okay. You mentioned the clarity and a number of other software improvements. Paint us a picture of how that's going and where exactly we're at in the process. I know that there are a number of steps that were outlined in previous briefings to council committees.
Sure, I appreciate that question. For the Clarity permitting software that will replace the 27-year-old POSSE system, we are on schedule, and it was an 18-month process. By September or so, we will turn off POSSE and turn on Clarity. So that's just right around the corner. For CivCheck, the artificial intelligence, the contract started in January. So I think by around the same time, the residential review with the AI will be operational. And then about 6 to 9 months after that, the commercial AI. E-plans, we did all the upgrades that we had said we would do. And so that is complete. And that was important because the E-plans integrate with POSSE right now, but will integrate with our Clarity system. So that's completely on track. We had some hiccups, but that's going. What else? Acuity was completed, and we really need to implement all of that. So that's a major thing that we have to do.
Yeah. Members, any, I guess, round 3 questions? Just want to be mindful that I'm making sure everyone gets a chance. Okay, if not, I have one last one. We were sent a mayor's message regarding incentive pay that listed a number of departments that were making incentive payments to either retain or recruit staff. DPP was not on this list. Does DPP do incentive payments? You mentioned the issues of retaining staff and all of that.
You know, I think we talk about that, especially for the engineers, because it's come up, but more would probably help. So yeah,
But is there a reason why DPP hasn't done incentive payments? It wasn't listed on the incentive payment report.
I think we were instructed to kind of go with the latest engineer raise and then see how it goes before we implement additional salary adjustments. Yeah.
Well, with so many vacancies, how is it actually going?
Not so well, but
So
yeah.
can we get some incentive payment things going to retain people so they don't go to the private sector or some other department?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, members, up next is the Department of Community Services. Their presentation is Departmental Communication 192. And while they get started, members, I do know we have 3 more departments who have DCS, DIT, and DFM. It's 2 o'clock right now, and I think we can power through. All right, and since DCS mostly falls under Housing and Sustainability and Health, Councilmember Wire will start with questions with you, just so there's no surprises. I don't have to cold call on anyone. All right, please proceed.
Thank you, Chair DeSanto Sam, Vice Chair Nishimoto, other council members, Anton Krucky, Director Designate, Department of Community Services. Thank you for allowing us to make this presentation today about our budget that we're taking forward to FY26. We are the Department of Human Services for the City and County of Honolulu, and we have a broad range of services that we deliver, everywhere from keiki to kapuna all the people that are struggling, all those people that are not struggling, people that are homeless, that whole range of delivering human services to the city. So our total budget that we is proposed is $173 million. And I'd like to sort of address right away for us, which is a huge impact, which is the ongoing issues that are going on with the federal government. Because of that 173 million, 122 million, or 70%, is really from the federal government. So I've laid out in the charts that you can see how each of our divisions are affected by this, potentially affected. So I think it's important to note that what's going on at the federal level, and I have to check like every 3 hours to see what's going on. But what's going on really is more like a corporate restructuring than what would be normally in government. And so, for better or for worse, I have a lot of experience with corporate restructurings, and there's process that you go through. And I think right now we're in the difficult process of not knowing what's going to happen, but things are happening at the same time, and that's normal in these kind of processes. I do feel confident that there will be a picture on the other side that will be there, that will emerge and work through. And so I need to plan for all contingencies, but I won't make decisions until things actually happen. And so, that's the place we're in. I understand that kind of process, and I'm ready to deal with that. But you can see of the 173 million, 122 being federal, it's a big part of what we do, but it's also been the benefit to the city of the leverage we've gotten from outside revenue sources to run the Human Services Department for the city and county of Honolulu. So if we look at the next chart, it really, it talks about the amount of positions that we're looking at that are affected by the federal government, and I'll go through the processes that we have. The important part here for us is that the city and the administration has put aside some money so that if certain things were eliminated, would we be able to react to that? And if I look at all of the positions that we have that are federally funded, the 10 million that we have is greater than the amount of money I spend on the federally funded positions. So in working towards what that picture would be like in the future, we'd be poised to deploy whatever of the solutions we want to deploy to the community. That being said, that just takes care of the employees. It doesn't take care of the flow through dollars that are going into the community that are really needed. So what kind of insights do we have on what may happen? And so that's what you have to watch. You have to say, what can I see coming out? So, just recently the House passed its measure going to the Senate. And in that bill, one of the large items was the Section 8, which is a large part of the money that is in this budget to be delivered. And that not only passed through the House, but it was up almost 10%. So you're seeing some messages. I don't know what will happen in the Senate. Maybe it'll be a month, kind of a agreement. Maybe it'll be longer. Maybe it won't. So we have to plan for these things. But what are the signals we're getting as these things go forward with the federal government? One of the other signals we had is a strong recommendation that HUD may not only do housing first as a strategy. And I think that that's really significant because I know that I've been in housing and then in Department of Community Services, and when all the money from HUD was only going for housing, and it's the concept of you put somebody in a home and you surround them with services, and that will solve what you're trying to do. I thought that was a very limited scope, and maybe it was because I came from outside government, but there are a lot of people that was what they believed is all we should be doing. And when you do segmentations of individuals and their challenges, you find that won't service everyone. Some people have medical issues, some people they're elderly, they need just elderly care. And you put somebody in a house and you surround them with services, that sounds comforting in the words, but if a caseworker has a 20-person casework load, then they're only seeing that person once a month. So we've needed to break out the kind of things we do. Our Work Hawaii division does that very well with its rent-to-work program. So you're sorting out individuals because what you're looking for are successful beddings, successful solutions, successful medical care, successful elderly care, right? And then we work at the other end of the spectrum with child care so our folks can work. So, we have in these positions of the 156, 98 are permanent, 50 are temporary, and 8 contract employees. So how do you navigate? So you can look through the 122 million that is federal grants, and of that you can see that really 101 of that 122 is the Section 8 money. So really the huge piece of that, and we're getting, if nothing else, the best signals that we can get so far from that arena. So I think we're poised to navigate. Some of the other signals that we've had, I stay in contact with Hakeem Wansavi over at the State and Public, and he's back in Washington right now. And, I'll be looking for the information that he brings back. I think that another thing of looking out there is the CDBG money. So we have not seen that money all year long. And, we have to get it out by the end of the month. And, they have timeliness and all of that. But just this week, we received the funding. So 7.9 million. And the good news about that is that we had already gone out with a pre-award solicitation. So we have people that we can award the money to, however fast they can close their deals. But these are service providers. And I think that one thing that does is it moves us, it made us kind of be creative, where we were taking money that was in different pots that were CDBG eligible. The rehab loan program was eligible, moving it over in addition to the 7.9 million that we got in an award. At the same time, I think consistent with the meetings we had in July with the council, we're moving some of the money that was earmarked for the Parks and Recs rehab and moving that into more service providers. So we were able to we only had one of the people that applied for the NOFA because of timing decline the funding now that we've contacted them. And that was just because their deal had moved so far along that we were the problem. We weren't able to award them. Right? You can give them a pre-award announcement, but you can't award. But now that we have the money, we've gone down the list, and we have folks that have accepted the awards, and they'll be trying to close their deals there. I tell that because I think that even if we're talked about for timeliness, I think we'll have a very good story to tell that we pre-awarded our solicitation, we got the money, and we got it out right away. And the timing was just how fast those folks can close their deals that they do. Again, all in the service provider area. And I guess the other last piece I would say about that is that means funding's flowing, right? So all's not lost. I mean, you can work on your fears and such like that, but I'll make decisions based on what actually happens. So this chart's another example of the sources of operating funds that we have. And it again highlights the heavy load that the governmental funds that give us, both in the state and federal. But I'd also say for the 33 million that really come from general funds, a lot of that's already set because it's GIA. 1/3 of that is GIA funds, which is really administered, again, to our service providers, which is excellent, but it doesn't give me a lot of flexibility in the personnel. I think one example of that would be we're moving with the DLM HOU reorg. They're moving the Affordable Housing Fund from DCS over to that organization. And it makes some sense where you're trying to create funding stacks to be able to do that. But with that fund came a couple of positions that were general funded. And so we had those people working on a lot of things, right? If you have a federal funded employee, they have to stick to what they're funded for. And so we're trying to figure out how we can move those folks and bring them back to DCS to do that, and I think we have a plan in place to do that. Also, that there were 2 positions that Budget and Finance showed that are really positions that help operate Work Hawaii programs, and so whether that's in our budget or their budget, it helps the operations of Work Hawaii. So that was pretty good with some of their challenges for funding that they have. But again, the 33 million out of the 173 is general funds. That's a high leverage of execution of all of the human services that we do for the city and county with just 33 million from general funds. So on the revenue side, this is revenue versus budget. The revenue estimate intergovernmental is up to 142, and in our budget we have 139, so it tracks pretty closely. Where you have the federal funds are 123 in the revenue. Our budget is 122, and the state funds in the revenue is estimated to be 18.6, and our budget tracks at 16.8. The revolving fund is good because not only is it a rehab loan fund, but it also gives us some flexibility with CDBG. And then there's some miscellaneous revenue, but that's the revenue that we'll bring into the city to help operate the organization. So if I wanted to present our vacancies to you, last year when I worked on the vacancies to you, one of the things that we continue to do, and we have it this year's last year, is every one of our strategies is by every position. So there's no position that doesn't have a strategy with it. And so we were able to execute a lot of that strategy. In FY25, we've already hired 32 people. I've had 1 retirement, and I had to let go 5 people. So that's actually a very strong record than other departments in the city in terms of uplifting what we do. We've kind of been stuck. We had 2 large reorganizations efforts in our Elderly Affairs Division and our Work Hawaii Division that kind of locked up some of the activities. You can't do them until you get the reorgs done. They are now out of the department, and they're out of BFS and out of HR, and the unions are looking at that and finalizing them, and that will allow us to make all of the last moves that we're going to make. So right now, as of February 1st, I had 115 vacant positions, and I expect to fill 15 of those by the end of June. So we would be at 100 vacant positions, and we expect to fill 10 next year in the positions, which would leave us 90 vacant positions next year. And then as soon as the reorgs are done, we expect to fill 65 positions. And that isn't all needed for hiring, because some 48 of those positions will be filled by people currently on contract. We're on a strong piece to kind of convert contracts to other civil service or limited term employees so they won't show up in the vacancies. But just so you know, the reason why we have so many vacancies is we create positions that would apply to a grant that we may have, and that grant might have gone away 2 years ago, but we don't want to get rid of the positions because we may need those positions for a future grant. So what we do is we can project out for 1 year that we're not going to use those positions, we can deactivate them. And so we plan to deactivate 24 positions, and that'll just leave us 1 position that we haven't got the full-on strategy for, but we will. So, we have a plan in place, and every block and every position has a strategy. So some of the service priorities that we think we've been able to achieve that's submitted in this budget is, within our, one of our goals is the command center for homeless. And when we move to our new building, we'll be able to put that up. I think it'll be a great place for you to visit. The object of this is not the HMIS database, which Partners in Cares run, but really a command center that can bring up information like what beds are available, where are our encampments, what do we know about them, and we can ask it questions and we can deploy artificial intelligence to help us sort those questions out. I expect it to be a very transparent center that you can come into, we can work through things, the public can come into. I think that these issues, we can take all of the intelligence that we can find to help us find the right decisions. Kira Chisholm is the Chief Data Officer for the city, and she's been leading this effort. We're about to go live with the bed availability for HONU, which will allow the police then, when they're on duty, to bring up online what beds are available at HONU, and then we'll take that same application, because we give tablets to HONU, so they're just running their applications, and the command center can go in there and just pick off the information without them having to call it in. And so we'd have a real-time system, and then we'll take that same idea with these tablets and give them the other shelters and service providers and be able to aggregate more data in this command center for operations. The next couple of pieces are important. This, the implementation, $280,000 for, we've used up our mobile shower units at the First Hawaiian Bank building, a la respite. And so we think that they may be needed in the future, and we'd like to go ahead and get those purchased so we're ready to play at the moment that we need those to use. Their best use is if you can find a place to hook them up to a sewer, but they're a great place for if you have a sense of urgency of getting something started that you can. We acquired in one of the largest 2 purchases of the city's history, the Waikiki Vista building, and we have money both in the CIP and in the operating budget for repairs and things that need to be fixed. The There's issues on some of the ceilings, elevators, and those kind of things that need to be implemented. The ones that we can put in CIP, we will, but it's estimated 1.5 million for the other items. Now, that building was given to us because within it, we have the band there. We have a lot of affordable housing in it, but we have 4 floors that are being run by Catholic Charities as a family shelter. And it really is an innovative program because the way the shelter runs is one floor or one group of rooms of 12 rooms are for people right off the street. So you take a family and you can bring them right off the street. But then after you've had them for a little bit of time, you can move them into the next 3 floors, which are 36 rooms, and that's supportive housing. And then from there, you have the time to put them in permanent supportive housing. And so there hasn't been a time, and Catholic Charities would tell you it's really great for them, where they can run a shelter and also have control of the next steps. And in that world, next steps are the most important. I would submit to you that as much as we tried, and we have implemented many new beds in the last year and a half, that when the music stops, there's still not enough beds, right? But that's an excellent program that we're doing for families at Waikiki Vista. The next 2 are about HONU, and the HONU is basically supported by Ohana Zone money from the state. But we have our employees. DCS runs it. HPD doesn't run it anymore. And while running it, we have some gaps in the funding and move it along. I would submit that these monies will help us meet the 2 budgets with our previous budget and the state coming up. We've been able to use FRF money to supplement that program. HONU is the top and best program on Oahu for navigating people into shelters. And the amount of people that it can take in right off the street, kind of get it organized so we know where they should go and what the right place for them to go, by far the top navigation center. But in addition to that, they place people in medical facilities. We have programs to return people to the mainland or the neighbor island where they're from. We do permanent housing. And so they really have a broad scope of activities, to the point that the administration has asked us to put together a proposal of what a second HONU would cost and be like because of its success and its flow. Also, we have some expenses. Work Hawaii Division, not only does it run a lot of programs like you would think in terms of training programs and such. They're running the program this Saturday on the recruitment program that's at Blaisdell. They do many outside activities. They also, a lot of people don't know, they do in-prison work for people getting them ready to come out of prisons and work. And they have their own van and outreach team. So we have direct service providers within Work Hawaii doing outreach. So we've asked for $50,000 more for some of the supplies they need to do that great work. And in the Office of Grants Management is where we've placed childcare. And there's one FTE in this position to assist in the coordinator in the conduct of the community outreach and in the meetings and strategies. So she gets her team together. She has built her team already with a couple of individuals from grants that the city hasn't had to fund, and she's done an incredible job in laying out a groundwork for some new child care centers that will really be built by the state's money. But we're going to kind of oversee them and coordinate those. And she's been involved in the child care centers that have already opened up. She has an action plan that has now been presented to the administration, and hopefully we'll be invited for an informational briefing to show you the child care action plan that the city has. The last one is the office from Kapalama. I know DPP was talking about they're putting some people out there, and part of that reason is because we're going to vacate there. And we're going to move up to the old CPB processing, their data processing center up on School Street. And so this is the money that's allocated to sort of do that transition. We got this great donation in this from CPB, and we'll have to figure out the acceptance of everything when the move happens, because they're leaving their furniture and much of the stuff for us. But what this really does is, one of our hiring constraints is space, and I think this addresses some of the vacancy issues we have. But we expect to open up some community centers. Our Elderly Affairs Division has a contract. They can build ADRC. And it's kind of a walk-in place for educational sessions, delivering services, an open space for the elderly to come in and engage us directly, where most everything has been on the phone and call center. And I think that'll be a great thing at that building. We look to move our Section 8 up there and interacting with the public in that building as well. And as I talked about before, the command center being up there. So we appreciate the council passed the PIM. That's going to allow us to move up there. That deal should be closed by the end of the fiscal year, and we hope to be located there this summer. So that concludes my presentation on the operating budget. I have one chart on the kind of briefly overviews the capital budget. The community development block grant, really that providing more money into that program that we can execute those grants, emergency solution grants that we can, those provide money that we can match the other grants that we're getting coming in to do that. The home program, that provides the grants and loan for people that need the affordable housing. I think it's at such a low level, it doesn't quite work as well into the affordable housing stack. So that's why that program has been left with us. There's a large amount of money for homeless facilities and being able to purchase properties there. That also includes the $5 million for Waikiki Vista in there, 5.8. But the 20 million would be properties that we would be looking at. The strategy that we have is that DCS could purchase a property and at a very low rate, lease it to a service provider. We're looking for them to be able to acquire, whether it's through us or the state or through other philanthropic efforts to be able to run the property. That's sort of been our ongoing strategy with doing that. We lease it to them for very little and kind of oversee that property. The process that we have right now is that we submit a document to DLM because they have to actually do the purchase transaction. And so we submit a document to them, we get it on their docket, and when we say go and they agree, they kind of go into negotiation. And it's taken us a little while to work out that process, but we have it. And I have enough applications into them right now that exceeds this budget. So, we're really going to attack this year. I think 20 million, if we did one large thing, it could be three properties. If it's something a little bit smaller, it'd be 4 to 5, potentially 6. I think these are the properties that would be out in your districts, right? And we need to work with you on those, and of course we will. And we'll give you the list of the properties we've submitted so far. The housing opportunity for persons with AIDS, this would be the last year that this money is good and for us to be able to do this. The HOPWA money coming out of the federal government, they've done a recensus, and so right now our population won't qualify. So FY26 would probably be the last year we'll get federal dollars. If we want to service that population, we'll have to strategize and come back to the council for that. It's just a matter of the census and how they counted. There are a lot of people on the rolls that are miscounted, people have passed away and those kind of things. So they did a census and we didn't qualify. So that's our presentation today. We're open to any questions. I really appreciate your time and attention. I have my team here, which I'm very proud of, in case there's something you want to ask them directly, but open for any questions. Thank you very much.
All right. We're going to start with Councilmember Wire, whose committee has jurisdiction over DCS.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Mahalo, Director. And to your team for being here today and all the work that you're doing. I'll just ask a few general questions to get us started. And, I was thinking it might be helpful because I know, I don't know if you had a chance to look at the status of the city's finances report that OCS put out, but I know we've been talking about that in committee. And, it kind of identifies some large lapses in funding. And so I was just hoping you could maybe walk through that so we have a better understanding of how everything works together. Like, for example, with EAD and Work Hawaii and CBD in particular.
Yeah.
Just kind of what those lapses are indicative of so people have an understanding, because I think when we look at it on the page, it might kind of, stand out, if that makes sense.
So we're in March, we're not in June yet, so some of those lapses will become smaller. But most of the lapses for Work Hawaii and EAD was because they couldn't do the reorg, right? And when they couldn't do the reorg, some of the funds that they had available to do, they couldn't get to them to execute them. And the reorg is not just the issues going on with us convincing HR, BFS, and the unions about it, but it's also space, things like that. For CBDD, it's really a matter of could we hire all the people that we wanted to hire? You know, I'm still a couple of administrators short in DCS, and so for CBDD, it's more of being able to hire. For the other ones, it's a reorg. We also have some of our lapses come from, and you see those when we come back to you for reprogramming, right? Where somebody, we've awarded something to a service provider and they weren't able to spend the money. And if we can figure that out, if they will tell us and we can figure it out early enough, we come back and try to reprogram it. But sometimes, you know, it gets dicey and we're not able to do that.
Okay, I appreciate that. And I think that's just, it's good to have clarity on that. So I think if folks have additional questions, I'm sure they can reach out to you or the specific administrators as well to better understand the specific use of the funds and everything. So I guess one of the things I wanted to ask too is when we're talking about Honu and getting folks housed or into services after that, in your experience, is there sufficient next steps? Are there sufficient next steps for folks going into Honu? Understanding the great work everybody's doing, and I think the budget is identifying ways to build capacity. I just ask because from what I hear on the ground is that that's kind of one of the biggest barriers, whether it's Honu or core, is having a next place to go or to send someone, whether it's low barrier, bed space, or higher housing.
So the words that we use is flow, because if a person is in one situation and then you're trying to move them to the next situation, if you can't find a spot for them, then the flow backs up, and then all this, Honu's not available and such. That's why we've worked really hard at building capacity. We've produced enough beds to service 1,000 people last year, and I think that'll have an impact. But to your question, it doesn't affect Honu as much because they're a first stop, and at that end there's more. But it's really true, as I mentioned before. If it's musical chairs and the music stops, there's not enough chairs. I also am concerned in the future. We've opened up Ala Respite, and now we've opened up the first of 4 shelters at the Evilay Center, right? But those were all TOD projects, right? The city bought those properties, which will be, building of a 2,000 affordable housing units. So I'm only in those spots for 2 to 3 years, right? So as soon as I can get these next 3 shelters done at Evilay Center, I've got to start looking to where I would move those even for there. So your point's well taken. I think we need a variety of beds, but I think we can also get creative. If we can use the healthcare flow instead of a housing flow, it relieves something over here for the right people. So we try to analyze at a lot of different levels, but in the end, like you said, there's not always enough flow.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, because Honu at its core is really triage. It's not housing, but it's a tool in the first step and very low barrier. So appreciate that. Can you tell us more about, because I know we have the Section 8, how many actual general funded vouchers do we have?
We have a few in the Housing First arena that we put out. We also have Housing First vouchers that we distribute from the state. We have some ESG money that comes in, and we fund some vouchers at Work Hawaii, but some of that comes from federal funding. And then the Section 8, we have about 4,000 vouchers in the community, over 4,000 vouchers. The list is getting lower. We're looking at a time we would announce to you when we think the next wait list would open. But that's where we're going with those vouchers.
Yeah, maybe could you walk us through maybe all the differences between all the vouchers we have? Kind of like how they function.
Yeah, Section 8 vouchers are probably the most robust. They're called housing choice vouchers, and the client can pick their vouchers. There's a subset under that of VASH vouchers. They're the most robust because they last the longest, right? The client can pay 30% of their income to go into those vouchers. Then they get them, and they're lasting for a long time. A lot of the other vouchers, like, rent to work vouchers and some of the housing first vouchers can only last a little bit of time, right? They could be a year and such to get somebody on their feet. Then you have to have a follow-on strategy. When we took a lot of those vouchers and we called them, they were housing first vouchers, but we call them Oahu Housing Now, right? We did 300 families with that and 450 people in that program a year and a half ago. But that being said, they only lasted a year. So we used the emergency housing vouchers that came out of HUD, which were 9 years, and 92% of those people are still housed. So the fact that you'd ask for differences is really true because they come in different ways that we use them, but we try to be as efficient as we can with them. But the biggest difference are the length of time and also whether or not they have like landlord engagement benefits to them, paying down payments or security deposits and such.
Does CAD have capacity to take on additional general funded vouchers? Or work or whoever would be the
Yes,
manager?
Yeah, our Community Assistance Division and Work Hawaii that does the vouchers, yes, we could. I think that if we could offer our people more vouchers, we would work very hard to do that. CAD has recently hired 5 people to increase their amount of vouchers. It's not budgeted overtime, but they use a lot of overtime to make happen, but they have a fill program to get up there to where they need to be. So I think we would be prepared and very willing to give more vouchers in the hands of individuals, families.
Okay, Mahalo. Thank you, Chair.
Councilmember Okimoto, any questions?
Good question, Chair. Thank you. Good afternoon, Director Kriki. I wanted to follow up on, I noticed in here you had personal services contract salaries to support the early child care program. Could you explain what that is? And just kind of give us an update. I know you mentioned it briefly that that's part of it, but this has been kind of a discussion, since I've been in the council. So could you give me an update, and what would this contract salaries be used for?
So thank you for that question. First off, the reason why we do it as a contract, because we don't know how long it wants to be, so we don't want to engage yet in a permanent position type of thing. But there's a lot of outreach that the coordinator does in the community. And this person, because the other people that we have from grants, they're doing very specific programs from the grants. And so she needs the additional resource to be able to engage the communities, to be able to communicate her programs out, get the data in from what the communities want, and then put them in their programs.
This is the program. So this is for the program coordinator.
Yes, to work directly with the coordinator.
Okay. And can you give me a quick update on the our homeless director? We have a new one right now. Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah, I'm very pleased that Roy Miyahira is on board. He's been on board 3 weeks. He's right there. And so we've been trying to have him come around and talk to each of you. And if he hasn't yet, it's on the docket. It's a steep learning curve in that position, but we have our strategies are pretty much in place and our activities, and he can pick up on that momentum. But he's only been here 2 weeks, and he has 2 major projects that he's working on that in a month's time you'll see the fruits of that. So he's really hit the ground running, and we're very happy that he's in there. You'll see his position is in administration, and then he reports directly to me.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Director. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Vice Chair Nishimoto.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Director. I'm looking at your chart on page 3, where you break down the budgets for each of your divisions. So, Community Assistance Division, almost entirely federal funds. Elderly Affairs Division, a quarter of it is federal funding.
Yeah, I think that really all of our divisions are highly weighted that way, except for the Grants Management Division.
So I know you kind of touched on it, but and you're monitoring the situation, but are you coming up with a plan in case there are massive cuts to some of these divisions, because they're almost entirely funded by federal funds?
Well, in terms of the employees, when I talked about the employee plan, council member, the administration has set aside a certain amount of money for the employment folks from that side for these divisions.
How much did you say?
10 million. And my total salaries for the people affected by the federal funding is 9.6 million. So I think I'm in a management range. And it doesn't mean that we have a wide swath of people being, of programs being eliminated, right? I don't expect that. But I do have a plan that would allow us to be organized to deliver however the federal government's delivering to us. And if Section 8 doesn't get affected, I'm really dealing with a smaller percentage of funds to be done. But yes, I do have a plan for that.
Okay, because, I mean, those could be decimating to some of these departments.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Those could be decimating to some, the cuts could be decimating to some of these departments.
Well, it's a combination, yeah, because if you don't get the funding that ends, within the funding is the money for the person, right? And so it would be a combination of the individuals and the community not getting the money. And so that's just the reality of everyone's fear at this time, you know, but at the same time where the federal government is reducing its employment in certain areas, you could look at it that, well, even if there's funding there, I won't be able to get the funding because there's nobody there to process it. Or you could say, you know, when I go get the funding, I don't have to go through 4 people to process it now. I only have to go through 1. So we'll just have to see what the world looks like when we get to the other side.
Okay. And I know you and I have talked a lot about homelessness, particularly in my district. And I think you're doing a great job of trying to get people into beds, into shelters. I know you and I talked a little bit about the piece of how many people are coming in from outside, what that rate is, and what do we do to kind of try to curb that? Because all the work you're doing to get people into shelters, into beds, if there's more people coming in, then the public doesn't see the results, correct? Is there anything in the budget that deals with that piece of the homelessness puzzle?
There actually isn't, and the reason is that we haven't come up with what I would propose to do that with. You know, I have some ideas, and I've shared them with you about
Yes.
one-way tickets and what you can do.
Yes.
The intelligence we're getting are all over the board. You know, I came out to surf with my brother, and then I became homeless, or I came on my own, or somebody gave me a ticket. I would like to do something where we could gather intelligence more on this, whether it be through the airlines or through the ticketing process. As soon as we can solidify that, and Roy and I talk about it already, I'll be right back in front of you. I'm not so sure it's a budget item as it's coming up with a method, because I think most of it, since the airlines are under the preview of the state, we'd probably try to deploy the solution through the state. But I agree with you. I mean, it's difficult, and it also takes a little bit away from your heart because you want to service the people that are ours.
Sure.
And there we are.
Well, I mean, and part of the issue, at least the feedback I get in my community, is we're spending a lot of money on homelessness, but people don't see the results. And I think partly they don't see the results because there may be more people coming in and replacing the ones that you're putting into shelters and getting help.
Well, I think that's certainly a scenario. But I will also, when I am in the neighborhood, I try to talk to people about stay current with me. I mean, there are roads that I drive down that used to have 20 homeless on them, and there's none. Right? I still look at areas where there are homeless, and that's too many.
And
right?
I get that, and you've done a good job in some of the areas we've talked about. You know, I drive by it every day to work. I see you guys have had great improvements in these areas. So I'm trying to stay current with you. But I just think, you know, it's part of an overall plan, not just for homelessness, because, you know, I think we do need to get them in shelters, because I think it's worse to keep them out there. It's more heartless to keep people out in the streets. But we're also trying to build, you know, walkable urban neighborhoods, and people will not walk around if they don't feel safe, right? So it's one piece of a bigger puzzle to me.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I have some of the same objectives and goals that you have in that area. I would also add to that when we're looking at the numbers, I know people kind of focus on the point in time count.
Right.
And they say that unsheltered has gone up, not much, but a little bit from the last one. But, you know, in statistics, if you do something the same way, you can compare one number to the other. They may not be accurate, but you can compare them. But the last point in time count where the number went up, they also had 100 more counters. So all of a sudden the number goes up. I think, though, regardless of that and the flatness of it, compared to the spikes, like on the West Coast, I think it's really been well managed. That said, that spike is scary, to your point, right, of people coming in.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Tolba.
Thank you, Chair. Director, thank you so much for being optimistic. I think, depending on where your views are, you can be scared or you can be positive in thinking that we are going to find ways to take care of our homeless residents and people, to take off the streets and give them back their dignity. And I want to just thank you so much for coming out with me and really helping me solve the problems in the district. So thank you with that. My question is, one of the budget highlights mentions $280,000 for the purchase of restrooms and showers, hygiene trailers to support homeless initiative projects, including Kahali's. Can you tell me a little bit more about that and how many trailers? Because I'm interested in maybe possibly bringing a trailer on my side of the island.
Thank you for that question and your comments. I appreciate it. They're a set of toilets, right, and then shower trailers. And these are the numbers come from some of the bids we have. And then you also have to couple those two with the ability to have different genders and ADA. So, that's how we've kind of scoped it out for, like, if you had a group that you were managing and it was, 40 folks, that it would take these kind of facilities. That's be the cost of bringing these trailers in.
How much are we looking at? Like, what is the normal cost of a trailer? Because I've seen it, and I think items like that in like some districts where I think some of our houseless residents just maybe need a bath or some place to go outside of our parks, because we know the challenges in the parks that, sometimes they go out and they destroy the parks. So
so each of these units can be like $80,000 to $120,000. And so, like I said, I was talking about multiple units there. And so that's how we estimated that. The thing to keep in mind, if you're going to use portable, where are you going to hook them up to, or are you going to come and drain them? It can cost a lot if they're on a site all the time. But if you're going to a place, bringing people in, want to talk to them about services while you're here having a bath. But, we also do programs with Project Vision that does the same thing. And so we could also schedule Project Vision to come into your district and participate in that.
Churches in the district, because we've talked to many churches that possibly want to, maybe take one or two families in, but like maybe a service area. I'm just asking a lot of questions, trying to be transparent so that, we can maybe possibly find solutions. So.
Yeah, I really, you mentioned something that I've been trying to promote, and the city has been supportive of this concept of a church adopting a family. And, we have the wherewithal to put a tiny home in a church parking lot. And if they can go into the church and use the facilities, the key to that, though, is, and so I'm trying to work with churches so they're not enabling homeless, but they're helping house homeless. And I think that that's an important difference. And so a person, when you want to house them eventually, one of the main sets of issues is they're still disconnected. And a church can do wonders with helping people connect. So let's promote that, and I can do that.
I think part of the challenge is, the church being funded. I mean, helping them get it set up, maybe funding them through grants. I think a lot of them would be open to helping the residents in the community, because at the end of the day, we want to help them change inside, right? And again, getting back their dignity and giving them hope. And not just, like you said, I think a lot of residents in our community, and I can understand Councilmember Nishimoto's challenges, are the community burnt out about I think they see a lot of enabling happening, and it's easy to spot that. It's so easy to spot that. And you hear about a ton of money that going into some of these programs. There's a lot of people that think, This is a big business. You know, there's a lot of money to be made in taking care of homeless. So I just, for me, it's like whatever we can come up with different ideas and like possibly helping churches, because I think talking to a lot of the churches in my community, if we had an opportunity like that where they can house one or two with the help from the city or the state, I think a lot of them would be open to doing something like that.
Well, I think we ought to do it. You know, I've already investigated that with CORE, and I have a memo on how the city, I know there's separation of church and state, but how the city can work with churches. We just don't help them minister, right? But we can work with churches on programmatic things, and caseworkers can be assigned to individuals. So look forward to working with you on that.
Same here. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councilmember Tupola.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chair. Aloha, Director. Thank you for being here and for the presentation. Of course, thank you for acknowledging your staff. We work a lot with Work Hawaii. Love those guys. They're very integrated into what we do into the community. I guess I just had a real quick question to start this off. What is the number one thing that I've said to you and to multiple homeless meetings that we've had with the mayors? Do you remember just like off the top of your head? Because I just want to see if I'm communicating clearly. What is the number one thing that I brought up every time we talk about homelessness?
Well, I'm going to say two, unfortunately. I'm going to say some more community engagement. So what we do is tuned with the community. And then the facilities that we would use to deploy in your community, we've done that with an engagement focus so that we're all kind of on the same page trying to do that.
Okay, so my communication is kind of so-so. So I feel like the thing I've been saying, and maybe I'm not communicating very clearly, is that we need district homeless plans. Because what I have in my district is not what Councilmember Dos Santos Tam has in his district, is not what Councilmember Nishimoto has in his district. So whatever you do in downtown most likely cannot be done on the west side because we don't have as many facilities, we don't have hospitals nearby, we don't have the quantity of resources that other people have, which is fine, but each council district needs to have their own plan because we have our own resources, our own quantity of churches, our own groups that are working together. And I think that for me, the main thing is that in each of these council districts is that we're making very ground level plans of what to do, because I would say that for the most part, you have a lot to work with downtown. And that plan is probably like on its way, right? I know more Punavai Rest Stop. Punavai Rest Stop, great idea. We have a few shelters, but are they within, walking distance of where these individuals live? No. Also, the second thing that we don't have that's all the same in all the districts is housing availability, right? So I have my own housing list of all the open units that are open in Waianae and Kapolei that are certain AMI so that we can match people up. So I think what I'm trying to say is like, I do love all of this. I know that you're constantly trying to innovate and whatnot, but we have to get down to the ground level of what's working in each district. So when we say we're going to quote unquote work with churches, like we should be able to say the names of the churches. I can tell you right now exactly the churches that I'm working with. River of Life hosts us, LMS hosts us, Arca Safety hosts us, where they actually host an event where we bring homeless in there and then they start to integrate with them. So I do think that that has to be the first step. And I'll be having a homeless symposium in April, which I'm definitely hoping you can attend. Secondly, is I do not think that some of these like continuing on without actually evaluating, and I'm specifically talking about Honu. I know what Honu is. I know what it was originally made for, but the question is that the best use of our money? And I'm not asking for an answer right now, Director, but I've asked this question multiple times because Honu uses large quantities of money, overtime money for officers. And yes, you guys are housing people. Yes, people go there. But for that same amount of money, could we have a bigger impact by having something that actually stays within the community and doesn't move around? I really think that that's the bigger question. So I like that you put it in there. You're very transparent. Under the salary of community-based development, you said implement Homonu program. But we got to ask ourselves, for the amount of money that we've put in year after year, is that the best, or should we actually invest into something that can stay there long term? Lastly, when we're talking about housing people, like I really think, and I'm actually having a meeting with all the housing specialists in my district, I really think that actually housing people, we would have to just sit around and solve problems. So I have housing specialists in Catholic Charities, in Kealoha West, in Ohana Ola, in Kahumana. So I sit with all the housing specialists and then I ask them, what is hard about this particular building? Okay, the application, or other people are from the mainland, or oh, the resident manager doesn't take any of our homeless people. Whatever it is, we go through and we solve it. Because one of the things you just said was, if we go and play musical chairs and the music stops and there's not a place for everyone, then it doesn't help, right? So I'm just saying that, Director, because I have open spots. I got open spots in Waianae in all these different places, but the question is, why are they open? So why do we have 30 open spots at US Vets? Why do I have 16 open spots at Haleiwa Vista? Why do I have 9 spots open at Kuliakanuu? With 500 people on the beach, why do we have open spots? And all we do is problem solve. So I think that that's like a real big part of like really getting us to the end of the homeless conclusion, right? Is like from the time that they're put into the system, right, into like having a caseworker or whatnot, resolving issues all the way to the end is really what they've had to struggle with. And I think some of these ones are important because you're getting close to it. That's all I'm trying to say, Director. You're getting close to it. You're getting closer to the solution, but we have to have district plans. We have to like solve problems that people can't solve, because really, I think as government leaders, as officials, we need to help them solve it. And thirdly, I really think that we got to reevaluate. We got to reevaluate the use of money, because I think with less money, we could actually make more impact. Because if we integrate churches in the way that we should and we can, then we would actually have solid community solutions that don't go anywhere, and we don't even have to fund it a lot because people care that much and they're already actually pouring those resources into our community. So I just wanted to say thank you, and if you would please take some of that into consideration.
I absolutely, Council Member. I think that your statements show your knowledge and how close you are in your community and working with people. Roy and I will be there in April at your session, and we'll have other sessions with you to continue this conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Chair Waters?
Thank you so much. Just following up on what Councilmember Tupola and Councilmember Nishimoto are talking about, homelessness in particular. You know, in my district, on Wailea Avenue and lower parts of Kaimuki, we still have people sleeping in doorways and whatnot. And I found that the folks, because I'll stop and talk to them too periodically, but they are folks who are very resistant, actually, to the help that the city wants to provide. So I'm wondering, how do we solve those problems where they don't want, because we've sent CORE to go talk to them, right? But what can we do to help these guys? Because often they're suffering from mental illness, right? They're not taking their medication. You know, when I used to be a deputy public defender, the police would arrest folks and send them to Kekela, and they would be involuntarily committed. And at that point, the court could order or grant an order requested by the doctor to involuntarily medicate. And then I'd see the world of difference, right? So how do we, or what are we doing to deal with that problem?
Thank you, Council Member, for that question. It is difficult, and it's also difficult for our citizens because those people are unpredictable, and that makes a public safety issue at the same time. At the mayor's homeless meetings on a weekly basis, I'd say 3/4 of them involve this subject. And what we're trying to do is, you know, there are other processes that you outlined in terms of going to court, the guardian ad litem. You know, they're trying to put more money into that program. There's only one guardian ad litem on the island. We're trying to push for that to grow. But we are also working on the concept that the involuntary, being able to pick someone up involuntarily for MH1, for HPD to be able to do that with a phone call, a consultation, you know, with the professional that can okay it. They can come over and hug the person and say, we really are going to take you, and then we're going to take them to sites that they can be evaluated. Now, it may be a padded room, you know, it may be just a hospital setting or one of our service settings. And so we haven't gotten that, you know, there's a lot of discussion about how you can do that, because I think as a former public attorney, defender, that you would understand that, but we're working towards that. There's no quick solution, but we're trying to work up the food chain a little bit to give us more flexibility in that arena.
You know, in my prior life, as a public defender, when people would be on probation after committing a crime, then we could order, the court could order treatment. And then the court, through the probation department, would pay for the inpatient treatment, whether it's substance abuse or mental health type of issues. Do you think that's something the city could pay for? Because we got some really good service providers, treatment facilities, Sand Island Treatment Center for one, that's no longer at Sand Island. But do we in our budget have money to pay for inpatient bed space for homeless folks who are suffering from mental illness or substance abuse?
In our budget, ongoing, Sand Island Treatment Centers, as an example, since you brought that up, we revamped their whole lease, and we lowered it to the area where now they could effectively do their programs, because they entered into a lease with the Department of Land Management, but it was like a regular lease. And so, we have some CIP money that we can do their kitchen, and we lowered their lease so they could operate, and we asked them to open 5 beds up for CORE to be able to deliver individuals for that kind of treatment. So it may not be as a direct program like that, but everywhere we get a chance, we're trying to enhance the exact things you're saying. But I think getting worked out this process where somebody can pick someone involuntarily on the street, and then we'll find the places they can take them, right? But I think we got to iron that out. It's not quite baked yet. There's a lot of different issues. I think that after we get through this legislative session, however the Attorney General does, will also give us a lot of information on what direction we can go.
Part of the process, I think you called it MH1, where if the police arrest someone, they have the option to take them to the Kekela ward, which is the mental health ward over at Queens. And then the doctors will look at them and decide if they're dangerous to themselves or others. And my understanding, and I could be wrong, but this is just my observation, is that the doctors will say that they're not dangerous to themselves or others and discharge them because nobody's going to pay for it, right? When these folks really are dangerous to themselves or others, and it's clear as day sometimes, but they still get discharged. So I'm wondering if we could dedicate some of this budget, and it could be federal funds, I'll leave that to your discretion, but some of this budget towards paying for the Queens Hospital, as an example. Do you think that's possible?
I'm in agreement with you. Whether it be a budget issue or where we go, I've personally been working very hard to bring the Adult Mental Health Division of the state into the game. And, we have them in one of our facilities. I'm working on another property that we might engage them with and lease to them for a little. So I think that it's really their kuleana to do those things you're saying and to direct us. And they're the people that if we deliver it to a certain facility, they don't have the same issue that Queens has to release them quickly. Then you get a 2-day, 3-day evaluation plus meds and such. It can make a difference. I do think, though, that from 3 years ago, that outside of Queens is completely different than what it used to be. But I think the solution lies for that. I mean, we can encourage it. I have been. It's the Adult Mental Health Division at the state.
Appreciate that. Okay, that's enough for me for first round. Thank you, Director.
Thank you. Councilmember Kiana.
Thank you. Thank you, Director. I just wanted to make sure I got my understanding of some of the statistics you cited. The $7.9 million that you just said that you secured, I'm sorry, was that for CDBG?
Yes, that was this year's award.
Oh, terrific, terrific.
Finally.
Oh, yeah. Okay, good. At least we know that, some of the funds are flowing down. Okay. With regard to the GIA, I know we had a discussion in one of the committees, and I do need to follow up with your staff because I'm looking at the awards for my district, and I do know that there have been concerns expressed, including from yourselves, with regard to the allocation for the districts. I'm actually willing to take a look at it because I'm looking right now, and I am a little concerned about the listing for my district. And I've also been contacted by a lot of people who feel that they're meritorious projects were not included. So I will have my staff work with your staff I'd like an in-person briefing specifically on the GIA program. On the CDBG, thank you so much for pivoting to the nonprofit sector. So I just, want to urge that you continue to do so. I would like to focus on page 6 on the various sources of funding. You have articulated about the 70% of the funds being federally funded. And the Section 8, that section, Housing and Community Development Section 8 Fund, 101.9 million is 58% of your funding source. So I am worried about that because, and I guess, a couple of us just came back from DC, and I think we're all receiving the best intelligence possible. But with regard to your communications with HUD officials who still have jobs, what is your understanding of the Section 8 program?
Well, thank you for that question. They're not sure. So I'm reading from other places. They're under a lot of stress. I think that the regional offices have already downsized individuals from there. They haven't eliminated that, though.
Yeah.
They may do some regional consolidation of regional offices. I think that we've enjoyed, especially in my 4.5 years, we've enjoyed a much larger and positive relationship with them. But right now, it's just been personnel. So I've been trying to watch other messages because I recognize that 101 million is a big piece of what we do. Yep.
And what is your ground intelligence in discussions with any of the Hawaii delegation members directly, given the fact that your agency is heavily impacted? Have you had direct communications?
Yes, we have, and we've been giving sources. It's interesting, and many times they come to us for what we see, as opposed to them telling us. I think with Hakim and from the State Public Housing Authority being in DC right now and having meetings, I'm looking forward to talking to him when he gets back. And then I look at the other announcements. Right now, it hasn't been about the funding for Section 8. It's more been about personnel.
Personnel.
Yep.
Okay, that's important because, and this is the same for a multitude of departments, like the Department of Education, for example, whether it is just abolishment of 50% of their staff and what happens to the funds. So in that same vein, there's the potential for the managers of these funds positions potentially might be abolished, but potentially the funding stream might be coming down. That's potential, yeah?
I think if anything we've heard from this administration, everything's a potential. But I think that what we've seen, I think we'll learn a lot when the Senate passes or doesn't pass the funding bill for the government. That will tell us a lot.
So let me tell you what I'm worried about. So you're talking about $101 million, right? So the $10 million that the city set aside, and you threw out a number that would take care of staff. But the problem is those funds are normally to be distributed to the community. And in this specific case, to families who direly need this funding. And so I think that's going to be the challenge for all of us on what we do with that as a society and as a city council. So you guys are going to have to do a balancing act, but you cannot be just looking at positions. You have to be looking at the funding flow and the communities impacted and balancing. If you get money, how are you going to utilize it? So I just wanted to say that. Can I ask with regard to, I'm not familiar with the Federal Grants Fund as well as the Special Projects Fund. Can you educate me on those two funds? One is for 17 million, the Federal Grants Fund, and the Special Projects Fund, which is not federal, is 16.7 million. And the reason I'm saying this is if you look at the totality of your sources here, general fund is 22 million, or the total city funding is 33 million, but if something happens to the 101 million, it's going to be bad for all of us. But you have a Federal Grants and Special Projects Fund, which have significant money. What are those funds?
Those funds go to 3 of our different divisions. They go to EAD, they go to Work Hawaii, and CBDD in different percentages. You know, right now, we haven't seen any information about those. I think Work Hawaii, we're trying to keep our eyes closest on for the funding flow, but within the federal grants, the other ones, you know, are still there and intact.
Yeah.
You know, the piece you said about the 10 million going to the community, when I said 9 million in salaries, those 9 million in salaries were coming out of the federal funds to start with, so they would stay there. You know, I think that the people in DCS, they question whether or not these cuts, you know, are you questioning whether or not the employee is relevant? And I make that statement to say we're looking at having a full force to deploy whatever the new world looks like, you know, to the community. And I think that, you know, we can plan and speculate and be ready. And I think we have a plan that's ready, but we won't make a move until we see something. Our decisions are based on that.
If you don't mind, I actually still don't feel that I have an answer to the source of the federal grants fund. Where is that coming from? I actually I'm not familiar with the federal grants fund. Is that coming from HUD?
Well, they come from different areas. Like for EAD, there's one source of funds that run the
EAD?
Elderly Affairs Division. You know, so there'll be one source of funds that come to them for what they're doing. Work Hawaii is a combination of funds that flow through CBDD, and they have state funding that they also get.
Okay, but the reason it's important is I'm trying to understand, yeah? So it's HUD, and then there's other agencies perhaps that fund this?
Yes.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'll do a follow-up with the chair. I need to know this. I'm asking you because you need to get a really good idea of the federal agencies that are the flow of funds. To put just federal grants is not enough for me.
Yeah,
because a lot of these other funds.
Yeah, I'll supply the details to you,
And then
Councilmember.
Special Projects Fund, is that a State of Hawaii program?
Yeah.
And, okay, so you don't have any problem. And what agency does that come out of from the state of Hawaii?
That's the state of Hana zone money, so it comes right out of the legislature as a funding to us.
Okay.
For Hono.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Because I'm just saying, this is a lot of money. And I think that depending on where the source of funding is, like Work Hawaii, I don't know if it's Department of Labor, it's going to make a difference in the funding flow. That's all I'm trying to say. So I'll follow up with the chair with regard to a specific
Specifics on that fund, yes.
Yeah, okay, but you know, I think you're doing the best that you can under the circumstances. And the most important thing is, you know, the mission in hand, and it's just move forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, council members, any round two questions? Okay, I have just a few. Councilmember Wire. Oh, okay, why don't I ask mine and then we'll go into round two, sorry. Okay, I just want to go back to the issue of federal grant funding. In his confirmation hearing, I asked Mike Formby if he thought the federal funding issue was a 10 out of 10 threat. And he replied that it was a 10 out of 10 threat. Do you agree with that assessment?
I think in the midst of this kind of a reorg, that the people that decide they're going to do a reorg, they're already decided what they're going to do. And you're still up here where they're looking at what you're going to do. Once it's happening, then those folks are actually in the creation of what the next world's going to look like. That's how corporate restructuring works. And so right now we're in this sausage mill time. And so everything looks like it's available to be cut. Anything can happen. You want to prepare for a 10 out of 10? But do I believe that in my own heart and seeing restructuring like this? I don't believe that. I think there'll be a picture on the other side. It won't look the same as the picture on this side, but it'll be a picture to work with.
Okay. And so when you say reorg, you mean that's a depiction of what's going on in the federal level reorg?
Restructuring, reorg, however you want to call it. Right?
From my perspective, on page 11 of your slide deck, for example, it talks about Work Hawaii. It's 96% grant funded, whether that's from the state or feds. And on slide 3, it says there's 76 federally funded positions. Now, I know we have $10 million to cover these folks' salaries, but if all of that money goes away, what are they going to do? Are they going to be paid to sit there, or what are we? I guess, do we have a plan for what to do with these people if we're going to pick up their salaries?
We do, council member. It's not that they sit there. We just have the capability with the backstop that the administration's offered that we start with a full layout. And then you can't make decisions until you find out what happens. But once we know what's happening, then you have to make decisions. Some of them aren't easy, but that's why a lot of our employees, because they're attached to these federal programs and state programs, that we have them either in contract positions or limited term positions. So it does give the city some flexibility. They're not easy things to do, but we do have flexibility to react to what we end up seeing happening.
I guess what I'm picking up on, and perhaps this is not the case, is I understand that we can't react to things that have not happened yet, and we don't know what is going to happen on the federal level. But I don't sense that we've given much thought to what those possibilities might be. I mean, we certainly should be planning for a worst case scenario or perhaps some minor impacts. I mean, it's like waiting for a storm. We know that there's a storm out there in the Pacific. We know it's a Category 5. Hawaii's a small little thing. I mean, the storm might go north, it might go south, but we need to plan for it, right? I mean, do we have these plans in place?
Well, I don't think it's appropriate when you're dealing with people to say, okay, if this happens, there's 5 people that don't do this. If this happened, here's 4. We know that we can make those moves depending on what happens. Our structure is there to do that, and then we can make them happen. What I wanted was the capability to do that. So the first step of the plan was to get the backstop, and we've done that. You know, if you were to tell me if Section 8 goes away, that's a big deal. There would be a major restructuring that would have to happen at an enormous rate. You know, Mike said, I think that the managing director, he wants to make sure that we're as poised as we can, and that 10 out of 10 gives us that backstop, and I think that that's what that created.
Okay, I'm gonna turn it over to Councilmember Wire.
Thank you, Chair. And I totally understand where you're coming from, Director, in terms of the restructuring. I think maybe you're more hopeful than I. Like, I see it as a lot of like just random, you know, when I hear from like Fish and Wildlife constituents that work at Fish and Wildlife that are like, oh, we're getting DI stuff cut because diversity pops up when it's like ecological diversity, right? Or constituents from NOAA that are being let go, or HUD, right? Like all the folks we work with at HUD. So I don't think it's a thoughtful restructuring or an intentional. And so I'm kind of on the fence too. I'm like, part of me is like, okay, we're getting to a point where the chaos is so nuts that it's going to collapse at some point. But we also have to acknowledge that the systems that are in place could take us in a different direction too, right? And so we're definitely going to be mindful of community needs. And so I just wanted to hone in on if we could walk through, you know, briefly, because I know we've gone through this a lot, but because it's such a big chunk of the budget. So page 3, when we're looking at the $678,000 for OGM that are federal funds, that is not covering the positions for the early child care work. That's just some of the work that they're doing. Is that correct?
Childcare, because they're in OGM.
So is that covering the actual positions?
Yeah, because of the grants that we've gotten.
Okay, is there any other funding for childcare work besides those federal funds?
No, we have some general funds.
Okay.
For the coordinator, and then we're asking for funds in this budget.
Okay, so there'll still be childcare work going on if we lose all those federal funds.
The child care plan and the action plan is fantastic. I think when you get the review of that plan, that you'll see that it lays out island-wide a way to manage to that. It articulates the folks that we need to run those centers. You know, we've already participated where you have out, you know, in Eva Beach, the new centers that have opened up with childcare in there. We were part of that consultation to build
I guess,
affordable housing.
Yeah, sorry to cut you off, because I want to be respectful of Chair, because I know he wants to get us through committee. So if we lose that 678, we need to automatically replace that with a different funding source, or will our early child care work be able to go on and continue to some degree?
Well, absent of those grants we got, that's part of her execution strategy. So we wouldn't be executing them if we lost that money, but we would then.
So that would cease all child care work that the city is doing?
No.
Why is that? Because there's other funding that's going into that work?
The
Is
grant,
there other funding going into that work?
yeah,
Okay, so there'll be childcare work?
it doesn't go away. no.
Okay, thank you, that's good. Sorry, I'm just trying to speed us up to get through for timing. Okay, so the 104 million, that's 64 positions plus the Section 8 actual vouchers, right?
Yes,
Okay,
the actual Section 8's the 101.
101, okay, okay. And sorry, just speeding up for I don't want folks to get mad at me for taking too long, so appreciate your patience. Yeah. Okay, so we know we have some general funded vouchers spread across the divisions, right? And so I guess the question is, if we assume all that 104 goes away, should we be looking at other general funded vouchers, or should we be talking to BFS about having, in our general obligation bond budget, a backup fund? Because we know that that doesn't go against the city's debt, right, unless it's actually released. But if we have that funding there, because we know the bonds can be used just like PAB is used for housing, there's other types of housing opportunities. I mean, would that be something we should back up with bonds? Not necessarily to use right away, but to have kind of in the bank?
Right, that would be the plan, is if that went away, which would be an enormous impact, that we would immediately see what the funding opportunities are. Because like I told you, there's over 4,000 vouchers out there in the Section 8 program. And so, not only do we give people new vouchers to use, but we have the existing monthly payments that are made to landlords. And so we would act quickly. We could see what we could do. Just like in the pandemic, where we did landlord payments to people to keep them housed, we have the same issue because we have convinced a lot of landlords to be part of the Section 8 program because they have guaranteed payments every month, right? And so all of a sudden, if they feel that we can't guarantee those payments, if we lose those, we may not get the landlords back. So I really appreciate the enormity of the issue. I just think that you can straightforward, head-on manage things that happen, and we would choose different routes. I think to prescribe what that route would be, and somebody say you don't have it exactly figured out, I'm not so sure that's needed in this. I think that if we found that out, we would make decisions and we would react to it. Yes.
Okay, no, appreciate that. Just throwing it out as an idea, because I know we've backed up the positions with general funds. I think it'd be hard to come up with $101 million in general funds. Could be maybe just a safeguard in the CIP budget as an idea. The 1.4 million in CBDD, is that ESG?
Yeah, it's mostly ESG.
Because CDBG is going over to DLM.
Yep. Affordable housing is.
Affordable housing.
Not CDBG.
Okay, so CDBG is going to stay with DCS.
Yeah, well, it's a combination of FGU, BFS, and DCS that kind of make that decision as a team.
Okay. Okay, so that's, a smaller amount. So maybe if we're looking at where that could come from, it could be operating. And the bulk of that, I'm assuming, you correct me, is, and you might have said it already, those are funds that go out to like nonprofit providers to provide services.
Yes, with some administration fees.
Okay.
Correct.
Yeah, so some internal, yeah, okay. And then the 5 million for EAD, what exactly is that? The 11 positions and then additional work, I'm imagining, or support for the community?
Yeah, it's some of their direct services funds, like some of their meals program and such, but it also is money that is surrounded for the new elderly, place that we're going to have people, the ADRC at the new location. Part of that is federal funds that will build that.
Okay. So in terms of that, say we lost that hypothetically, do you have any thoughts on, I don't know if the administrator has thoughts too on the broader work that they're doing, like if EAD would just absorb the impact and the funding they already have, or if there's other, thoughts on the best way to proceed?
Well, if portions of the world fall in, then those portions wouldn't be available to be replaced. And right now I have $22 million if you take GIA out of it to, spread around. So we would, that would, if you have situations like that in organizations, that causes restructuring. We would have to go through our own restructuring to react to that. We would also work with the administration to see how we want to do it. The administration is very committed to delivering services to the populations on Oahu. So that's why I really feel confident that if these worst case scenarios happen, like you're talking about, that we would be in close communication to figure out if there are pathways to restore that. The first piece would be is I would have the people with the backstop to help us make those plans. If the plans aren't doable, then they're not doable. But if they are, we'll work to make those happen.
Okay, appreciate that, because I think like we're all in agreement that we hope it all works out great. I think the exercise that we were just preparing for budget was the contingency planning, right? Because we want a community to feel confident, especially with all the uncertainty. We want our city workers to feel confident that no matter the path that our country goes down, that our city government is going to be here to be responsive, meet their needs, support them, and face whatever challenges that are going to come with them and have their back. And so I think that's kind of the purpose of the contingency. It's not hoping that the sky falls. It's not even assuming it is. It's just recognizing that there's a lot of stress and anxiety and frustration in the community, real world impacts on people's lives that they're experiencing every day. And I think for us, just trying to provide a little bit of reassurance and stability in a very chaotic world, I think is part of the importance of the exercise. So I know with workforce, and I'll end here, Chair, we're Kauai division. So that 12 million, what happens if that goes away?
Well, if anytime you want to do a scenario where everything goes away,
Yeah.
it becomes the same solution management thing. I don't think that the world will look the same on the other side of this. It will be different, and we'll have to adapt to that difference. If you lost all the funding in an area, and then we would meet and we discuss about what particulars are the priorities that we would do as administration and what are our options to come up with to address that. But at least we'd have the team to address it in place. And then from there, we'd make it. I think when I gave you the statistics about the last year with employees, I can make hard decisions. I'm willing to do that, but I also want to have a lot of empathy and supporting our employees in terms of not just supporting them, but making them know that the work they do is relevant. So we would go into a mode of considering what we could do, and then we deploy that.
Okay, so what does the 12 million cover again?
Well, the Work Hawaii division, they're doing job training. They're doing the programs that kind of is partially with the American Job Corps, right? In placing, they do job recruitment, right? They're doing outreach, and they also, like I told you, they were in the prisons. And in some of the work they do, we've established satellite networks in libraries around the island. So it's just a mixture of activities like that they do in terms of all about economic drivers and personal uplifting of individuals that need to be working. Part of the money, some of the money for Work Hawaii comes from outside, but some of it, like in terms of the work to rent and stuff from CBDD. But in general, it's mostly federally funded programs.
Okay, thank you so much, Director, for entertaining the conversation. Malo, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, any other questions?
Chair, I'll just be short.
Councilmember Supola.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention one thing, Director Crookie, because I do think with Councilmember Waters' comments that, the MH1 is one process, but MH10, there's lots of different forms, right? So the assisted community treatment is actually already funded on the state side to Queens Hospital, but I would agree with Chair Waters that the definition of causing harm to oneself and to others is not being interpreted the same at the hospital as what officers are doing on the streets. So I'm just letting you know that there were two bills that went through the ledge to kind of like amend what the law said so that we can use it a little bit better. I met with the Attorney General Ann Lopez, and they're also meeting, we're meeting with Hilton Raphael to just kind of like get through all of like just the things that, because the tool's out there, but we're not actually being able to use the tool, help people who really are a harm to themselves and harm to others. So I'm trying to problem solve with them through how come the tool's not working or how come it only works in certain places. So I'll keep you updated, but I just wanted to say that because I don't think we have to put more money into it. I think what I've been disappointed with is that there has been money put into it, but the tool's not working. So hopefully if we can get that up and going, obviously mental health is a huge component of what we need to do for the homeless. So thank you very much, Director. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for those comments. I would like to add that not only do we address that in our mayor's weekly homeless meetings, but we had the AG's office and we also have the state office talk to us about those different components. So we're trying to break those down as well. And we are watching what's going on in the legislature. So it's a very important issue, yes.
Okay, thank you, members. Any other questions? Director, I guess I would just close by echoing Councilmember Wyer's comments. I mean, this really is about making sure that we're prepared now through our budget document for any eventuality. And I would hope that we're in a position to be able to plan ahead a little bit, not just simply react after the fact, after some program that many of us depend on gets cut. And I don't think we're asking for every possible eventuality to be thought through, but I think it's that your department and your staff understand that what you do really meaningfully affects people's lives. And we need to be prepared in sort of broad stroke ways. As I mentioned, it's like there's a hurricane in the East Pacific. It's coming our way. It may miss us. It may be a tropical depression by the time it gets here and no more than a thunderstorm. But we have plans in place, right? We have plans where we know that there's going to be, we probably have all kinds of disaster plans in place, right? And I would hope that something similar is in place within your departmental communication 193. And members, it is 3:30 right now, and I think we can probably get through both departments. If you don't mind. I think DIT's presentation is reasonably short, so I feel like we can get through them as well as DFM.
Thank you very much.
Please proceed.
All right. Honored members of the City Council, Budget Chair Dos Santos, people that are left anyway. We've got a slide deck that I'm going to take us through. In the meantime, I'd like to say a few words basically about the direction of DIT and how we're going to go. I'll try to keep this brief because I know it's towards the end of the day, but we've got some overall concerns. Have you got that slide deck up? Okay. These are kind of overall concerns, and we've talked about some of this before. We're working with to roll out AI, machine learning, and process automation. We've got a lot of suggestions on how to do that. We've got some pilot programs. We've actually successfully rolled out a chat bot now to the customer service division. We've got, we're working on an IVR, generative AI tool that's going to take care of most of the 800 daily calls that they get. We're looking at process automation that basically takes robots and does what used to be human tasks like processing bills. We've got a process that, all the city and county facilities that we have get bills all the time sent to them. They get water bills, they get sewer bills, they get electronic, HECO bills. We were paying a lot in service fees because it took so long to get to those. We now have automation that speeds that process up. We have no more delinquencies, and in 2 hours we get done what used to take almost a month. I'd like to talk about the procurement. We've heard, and I've been monitoring some of these things, and we've been hearing about procurement and how it's very difficult and how they're understaffed and a lot of things can't get through procurement. It's kind of seen as a bottleneck. And I think IT has to take responsibility for some of that. We have an ERP here called Advantage. You know it as CHIRPS. And I think what we really want to do this year is try and roll out the things that are built into CHIRPS, try and take care of, without spending money, do the change management and do the industry best practices that's built into the system and try and smooth things out and streamline processes that they have. We've got a pilot right now going on by which we're rolling out electronic signatures, digital signatures, where you're having breakouts for approved supplier lists that should help. There's a lot of things that we want to do to help them do their jobs more efficiently, and I think there's going to be a lot of outreach for us to get them to eliminate the bottlenecks. So I just wanted to come out and mention that. And we've also talked about the increase in cameras. We've got a lot of cameras in Chinatown. We've got cameras in Waikiki. More and more cameras are going to come on. We're not really impacted this year by that budgetarily, but I would like to point out that this is going to be something that we're really going to have to look at in the future, and not just implementing the cameras and maintaining them and cleaning them on a regular basis, but we're already being impacted by the people that are asking for the data from the cameras. We're getting subpoenaed. We're getting requests from the public, sunshine laws. That's going to be a huge thing that we're going to have to address, the whole governance and how those things get processed, because it's going to rapidly become a really, really big part of our business. And last, I'd like to mention Office 365. We talked about it, and it's definitely on the radar. I was kind of hoping that we'd get the $4 to $5 million to roll it out this year to the entire city and county. I know that there's a lot of factors on the budget this year. It's a pretty tough budget to break free that kind of money. So what we'll probably end up doing in the event that we don't get it approved is that we'll roll it out on an as-needed basis as the different departments come up with their budget. So, all right. Leon, let me go through here. I know we're on short time, so. My first here is the DIT operating budget comparison between this year and last year. Let me get my reading glasses out because I'm so old. If you can see, the big expenditures that we've got plus 78% in equipment. That seems like a big number, but if you actually look at the numbers involved, it's not really that much. And if you look at the past years, we really haven't been spending almost any money at all on equipment. This is an attempt to get us to the point where we can go ahead and do our refresh and start changing out old PCs and old servers and old network equipment before they fail. And so that's what that is. We have very modest increases in our current expense, which is our operating budget and salaries. And part of that salary is a new position that we're asking for. It's called a CISA. It's our Chief Information Security Officer. That's $174,000. We're pretty excited about that. Here's another breakout of the same chart, just kind of detailing it. Again, with the salaries, we've got that new position. We've got a couple of permanent computer programmer 2 positions. We're asking for some contract computer programmers for our CSRs. And then we also have one data processing analyst. Those 2 contract computer programmers, we're taking, I get down here, a conversion of 2 contract data entry operators into permanent data entry. They've been in the basement of our FMB building doing scanning and imaging for years now, and we're going to make them permanent employees. In terms of the current expenditures, we've got an increase in our ERP functional support contract. It's something that we can't get out of. It's just baked in. We have increases in software maintenance and increases in hardware maintenance, and that's basically the rest is all PC and printer replacement funding. And then equipment, we've got, again, a lot of these are sunk costs that we just have to address. We have 30 switches that are aging out. We've got our server refresh catch-up that we want to do, and that's basically it. Not a lot of discretionary things in there that we want to lose. Next one. Okay, budget issues. Whip through this. Again, the 2 data entry operators that were conversion. We've got our new project manager, working title is Chief Information Security Officer. And a few words about this. This is a professional IT cybersecurity position. I'm not sure if we can attract a really top-notch person for that salary, but I'm hopeful that in this day and age right now with certain factors on the economy, like Hawaiian Airlines, certain factors with federal workers, people that are maybe sunsetting out of their currently funded jobs. They might want to stay here in Hawaii. We have an opportunity, kind of a window to maybe attract some tier 1 support for that. We're going to certainly try to fill it as soon as possible. And then we have some ERP, CSR people that we want to get. And let's just go to the next one. We have 19 vacancies available in the department. We have 160 people in our department normally, so that's not too bad. But since we printed this, we have gone ahead and filled 4 positions, and we're in the process of hiring 13 more. So ideally, at the end of this fiscal year, we'd be filling 17 of 19 positions, with 2 positions on hold due to either funding or reorganization. We do have 1 federally funded position. It's a grant-funded position through the Department of Community Services and Work Hawaii. It's an ITST-2 position. They provide support to the Department of Community Services, and we get reimbursed for that. I have some overtime costs. It looks like we are going to completely expend the $158,000 this year for overtime. The vast majority of our employees are salaried, but in the event that we need to expedite something or we need to pay premium pay in overtime, night shift differential, standby pay, emergency services, we do allow overtime. And so we're asking for the same amount next year. Here's the DIT revenue. If you look up here, the very first 3, the state, federal, and county billing, that number is money that we claw back from those agencies, primarily for our mainframe-based system that provides vehicle registration and driver's licenses. And then we have rental use down there. We have a lot of real estate around the island that's high up. We've got a lot of antennas, and we do lease space on those to local telecom companies. We do have some 911 expenses. This year, we've got an XCOM recorder hardware that we have to buy for $500,000, and then the cost of our pictometry imagery went up, and that's the ortho flyovers that take pictures of the island, and we use in our GIS system. And that is about it. Oh yeah, sorry, our CIP budget. I'm asking for $5 million for a new antenna primarily, and then the associated maintenance, design, UPS, generators, and maintenance.
Okay, members, any questions? Councilmember Cordero.
Thank you. Hi, Director McKee. Thank you very much for your excitement and also for your efforts to bring DIT up to speed, really. And my question is relating to the different positions that you have that you're making permanent. Is it just those that are at the basement? How many more positions are you looking to make permanent?
Just those 2. So,
Just those 2.
So they've been contractors for years down there.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I met them.
Oh, you
in the
did?
basement, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I went to all the floors of that DIT has, and it's really cool. I didn't realize that they weren't permanent.
They've been toiling down there for years.
Yeah.
So we think it's only fair.
Okay, and then for your CIP, I know that you mentioned that it's just $5 million, but how about anything because our systems need a certain temperature that they're in, and you have so many people everywhere. Any CIP upgrades for, I guess, offices for your staff?
You know, we tried that a couple of years. Again, I'm kind of the new guy, so I don't really know how this all works. But we did have some funds available for new furniture and a build-out on the 5th floor of HMB. It's my understanding that our employees decided that they were good with what they had currently, and so that was withdrawn. I can go revisit that at some point in the future, but as of right now, we don't have any plans for a big remodel.
Okay, thank you. And just wondering, because I know that you're trying to fit these big machineries. Some of them we may or may not need in the future in different spaces. So I was wondering if you're looking to look for more room within FMB as well.
Well, if there's anybody willing to give up any more space in FMB, we'd be willing to take it.
Yeah.
We have the 5th floor, and we have the basement, and then we have half of the 6th floor that we share with HR. And if you were ever, well, you obviously went over and took a look. It's pretty crowded, but
yes.
You know, we're constantly looking at where we can send people. We have distributed IT resources at different places. You know, we have some co-located with their customers, some CSRs. For instance, ENV, Kapolei, we've got resources there. We also we rent the Cat Sushi building. I mean, we call it the Cat Sushi building. I'm not sure what the real name is, but there's a sushi restaurant on the bottom. We have the second floor over there that we have office space in, so.
I call it the Katsushi building too. I don't even know what it's called. But yeah, I was just always wondering because there's different machinery that's just in the hallway that we use to, I guess, shred those things. So, I mean, like meaningful spaces where things are kind of just not placed randomly. Yeah.
Well, oddly enough, you know, when the mayor had me take this job, you know, I asked about that. I said, what about, you know, support for IT? Is the budget some kind of Hunger Games thing that we all have to go through and it's going to be brutal? And he said, you know, anything you want, just let me know anything you want. So I put together this big list of furniture and things like that for my staff. And then at my very first cabinet meeting, we saw the facilities that Ocean Safety works in. And after that, I'm like, you know what, we're good. We're, you know, fine.
Understood. Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, members. Any other questions? Councilmember Kimoto.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Director McKee. And I do appreciate when you made the time to come and meet with us as well. And I know that you have a big task. I appreciate what you're doing. Looking forward to see how you can modernize or be more efficient across the board. I was wondering if the department has any plans to migrate to Office 365.
Yeah, we've got big plans to migrate. I mean, that was one of the big asks. So when I met you folks, then, you know, we had a really good working session, I think, and that was one of the things that everybody wanted. And then I talked to all the directors, and they all wanted it too. And there's a lot of reasons for that, right? You know, there's the integration, and there's the fact that it's you know, it's a web-based product, and you get the latest version, and there's security patches, and there's, you know, all the tools that you get like Teams and you know, SharePoint. There's all the version control, and I mean, there's a lot of reasons to do it. And so, and then you wouldn't have to worry about archiving your data
Our
all the
emails.
time. Yeah, so.
What would be the estimated cost for this?
If we were to roll it out city and county-wide, it'd be between 4 and 5 million, be about 4.5 million. It's right now, they're quoting us I think $56 per person per month. But again, if we came to them with a large number of people, we'd probably be able to skinny that number down quite a bit, especially this time of year, because they're looking to make their numbers. And so we might be able to cut a deal. But again, I realize that this is a pretty tough budget year.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, members. Any other questions? All right, I have one last question. This is about the rental for land and tower space. Over the past several years, we've gotten about 7 or 8 different resolutions asking to waive the rental fees that are in ordinance and negotiate a different amount with these cell phone companies that want to put up towers. This suggests to me that maybe we need to revisit the ordinance and see what number is fair. Is that something the department would be willing to consider?
Yeah, we would definitely take a look at that.
Okay, great.
I'll check with Tony, and we'll see, you know, these contracts all have different lengths and different lives on them. And yeah, the city has some serious resources in terms of property that we own, line of sight from those properties, and, you know, towers that we've already built, power generation, backup, things like that. So yeah, it's valuable.
Okay, great. All right, members, last call for questions. Okay, seeing none, thank you, Director. Next up, Department of Facility Maintenance. Their presentation is Departmental Communication 194. And members, while we wait for the Department of Facility Maintenance presentation, just as a reminder, tomorrow at 9:30, there's a special budget committee meeting to consider financing for a project, an affordable housing project at Komohana something. And then following that at 10 a.m., we have the Department of Human Resources, Enterprise Services, Department of Design and Construction, Environmental Services, Customer Services, and then the legislative budget, which is the Auditor's Office, City Clerk, the Council itself, and then the Office of Council Services. Friday, we have the Department of Parks and Recreation, as well as a contingency day for any other department that, for whatever reason, can't do their presentation on their designated day. All right, we have the PowerPoint for the Department of Facility Maintenance up here on the screen. And we'll await the presentation. Director Albano, are you ready? right, when you're ready, please proceed.
Good afternoon, Budget Chair Tyler Dos Santos. My name is Gina Bono, Director and Chief Engineer Designate of the Department of Facility Maintenance, Vice Chair Nishimoto, members of the committee. Before I start, I'd like to quote again. I think I quoted Oprah Winfrey last year. So I'm going to quote Theodore Sinclair. In the grand opera of life, acknowledgement is the standing ovation that fuels encore performers. And therefore, I would like to introduce the rock stars of DFM. Deputy Director Warren Mamazuka, Chief of Automotive Equipment Services Robert Primiano, Chief of Road Maintenance Tyler Sugihara, Assistant Chief of Road Maintenance Dustin Harbotto. He's here in observation. He is in chief in training as part of our succession planning. Chief of Public Building and Electrical Maintenance, Richard Yanetta. Program Administrator of Stormwater Quality, Randall Wakamoto. Executive Assistant, Jasmine Hoffman. And lastly, Administrative Services Officer, Liana Ramos. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for the opportunity to present our informational brief for the fiscal year 26 budget. Just to help Vice Chair Nishimoto, I wanted to make an opportunity to just explain the divisions and what each of the divisions are responsible for. Chief Engineer's Office directs, supports all of the divisions. That includes messenger services. The AES, Automotive Equipment Services, is responsible for vehicle and equipment repair and maintenance program for city agencies, excluding BWS, HPD, HFD. Public Building and Electrical Maintenance is responsible for repair, maintenance, and renovation programs for city buildings, structures, street parking, parks, mall lighting and electric facilities, and communication facilities, custodial and utility services, and also administrating the city employee parking. Road maintenance is responsible for maintenance of city roadways, sidewalks, storm drains, streams, bridges, striping, signs, municipal parking lots, bus stop shelters, and all the like that's related to roads, including SPO and S&O enforcement. And lastly, Stormwater Quality Division is responsible for implementing the stormwater management requirements and controls to protect and safeguard the general health, safety, and welfare of the public residing in watersheds within the city, as well as oversee and enforce compliance with the National Pollutant Discharge and Elimination System, as well as permit requirements for the municipal separate storm sewer system, also known as MS4. Moving to our budget summary. Our proposed fiscal year 26 operating budget is $134 million, relatively level with a slight decrease of 1.5% compared to fiscal year 25. Salary increase is roughly 3.8% higher. We do not have any permanent positions. No new permanent positions, and we have no contract positions, and we currently have 91 current deactivated positions. Current expenses decreased by 6%, and we have an equipment cost of $1.4 million. Our funding source comes from 8 sources. General and highway funds provides expenditures for all divisions. Highway beautification is for DRM. Bikeway is for DRM and PBM. Transportation is for PBM. Sewer, refuge, and recycling is for AES, which is primarily used to fund maintenance of their vehicles. We'll move on to the breakdown of each of the divisions. First off, the Chief Engineer's Office. And for simplicity, I'm going to just highlight deviations by percentages as compared to last year. Operating budget is 2.6 million, which is a 8.7 increase. We have a salary increase of 8%. Current expenses is 17% higher, and we have no equipment costs. For automotive equipment services, budget is 22.8 million, an increase of 2.1%. Salary increase of 3.3%. Current expenses is a decrease of 3.4%, and we have equipment costs of $228,500. For public building and electrical maintenance, we have an operating budget of 44.8 million, which is an increase of 3.1%. Salary increase is pretty flat at 0.5% higher. Current expenses increase of 3.6%, and an equipment cost of $431,000. Road maintenance, we have a budget of 48 million, a decrease of 8%. Salary increase of 3.5%. Current expenses, a decrease of 22.7%. And lastly, equipment costs at $750,000. Our last division is the Stormwater Quality Division, has a budget of 15.7 million, which is 1.2% higher. Salary increase is flat at just 0.8% higher, with current expenses, again, flat at 0.2% higher. And lastly, equipment costs of $33,000. As of the 1st of February, DFM has 239 of 845 authorized permanent full-time positions, of which is roughly under 30%. And as of today, we actually reduced it by 1 more percent at 27.1%. We have 91 deactivated positions, as mentioned earlier. Overtime, we have 55,000 hours at 2.6%. It's broken down to administration and CEO at 802 hours for 40,000. AES at 22.5 thousand hours. And that's primarily because of the need to work a 6-day work week that includes holidays and provides support for ENV and Refuge, which they do collections on Saturdays. DRM has 21.3 thousand hours. PBM has 8.5 thousand hours. And lastly, Stormwater Quality has 1.8 thousand hours. The department's revenue sources are as noted. Many of the sources are from parking fees, gas sales, lamppost banner displays, sidewalk cleaning, fines of stormwater, and hopefully some federal grants in the future. Moving on to capital improvement.
Actually,
project?
Director, can we,
Yes,
can we
sure.
just pause really quick? Does anyone have any questions on the operational side of DFM at this time? Councilmember Tupola, or is it more on the CIP side? Okay, we'll just dive in.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll proceed with just a summary of our CIP budget of $249 million, of which is because the department is the designated owner of the facilities. The majority of the budget is managed and facilitated by DTS and DDC, which will or was going to discuss it further during their presentations. For those that have been identified by DFM, we do have $1 million identified for municipal facility improvements on deck 17, slide deck 17, and on slide deck 20, we have all of the NPDS projects that in essence maintains that program. Moving on to the last slide, or last slides of CIP major equipment, we have a budget of 7.2 million, 5.8 million of which is to replace very outdated equipment, and 1.3 million for new equipment to enhance our core services. And with that, I appreciate the opportunity to field any questions that council members may have.
Okay, members, we're going to start with Councilmember Tupola.
Thank you so much, Chair. Aloha, Director. Thank you for everything. I just wanted to say thank you for responding to my comment the other day in committee. You're one of the very few directors that when we ask, like immediately responds with a chart. So specifically, I had asked for a breakdown of the SPO and I wanted to know it in numerical format. So you kind of gave me a little matrix and actually built into it, and I'll be sending it back over to you. I wanted to numerically know how many staff members were required, how much funding was required, and not just from your department, but from all the departments, so we can kind of equate one SPO to a particular cost. But I just wanted to say thank you. And of course, thank you for highlighting your staff members and your admin team, because I would say they're all excellent at what they do. And I'm glad that you have a succession plan, because I think that's really important as well. You guys do great work, and all of the departments in the city are very grateful and dependent on you for the leadership that you provide. So that's my only comment, and I need to log off at this time, Chair. But thank you, Director. Thank you, Chair.
And thank you for the questions. Thank you for letting us know. All right, Councilmember Cordero.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Director Albano. Thank you very much, and to your whole team and your whole department for everything that you all do. As I mentioned last committee, that everything that you all do is very tangible to our neighbors and to us, and especially to all the city agencies. So thank you, seriously. Along with the different major equipment, I was wondering, we were talking about the crane. Is there another name for it, because it's not listed on here? Is that one of the excavators?
Is it a specific line item that you're mentioning?
Remember you mentioned how we were our one crane?
Oh, the long reach crane.
The long range crane.
That is the
yeah.
The crane is coming in this year.
Oh, so this year, so no need be in the next budget then?
It does not have to be in the budget.
Okay. Okay, cool. I forgot what I was going to ask there. No, now I know, I remember. Sorry. Okay, so going back to, so now you have all the road maintenance as well as street sweeping and as well as trash pickup at bus stops, right? I know that we talked about that, and I was just wondering if, do you have any plans for making it, I guess, easier for all your crews and teams? Or, I mean, the biggest part is making sure cars are off the road for you folks to even do it, right? So is there a way to, how can we help? Let us know.
Thank you for your comment, Councilmember Cordero. Let me take that back to the team, and we can follow up with the needs that we may need from council members.
Okay, thank you.
Council.
My last question is that back in, I forgot what year, but DFM has the ability to cite private properties for not maintaining their waterways and streams. Where are we on that? That could possibly be revenue for the city.
Let me table that or have our chief DRM
Okay, thank you.
respond to that.
Please do. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Okimoto.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Director Designate Habano.
Thank you for the correction. I have yet to be confirmed. That's correct.
We're almost there. I had a question based on, and I've asked you this before about the stormwater, because I was looking at the numbers for stormwater quality and as well as the road maintenance. We know that they're connected in one way or another. If the roads are not maintained properly, that can impact the stormwater drains. And you've been really good about communicating with me, especially in the areas in my district. But could you just maybe give us a summary of what the plans are? I did see that the numbers have gone up a little bit. And is it because of just salaries? Is it because of equipment? And what is the plan? What are the department's plans in addressing the areas island-wide when it pertains to the road maintenance as impacts stormwater quality? Sorry, I'm thinking of the flood. Maybe I'm thinking about this the wrong way. I'm talking about how you guys are maintaining the areas that could be impacted by storms and floods.
We have identified probably the key areas as it relates to flooding and identified those projects, potential projects to be prioritized. And it was just identified as funding mechanisms, and that's the reason for the increase.
And the identifications are based on just in the past, or incidents in the past, or what were the criteria used to identify?
Yes, that is correct. It's
Okay.
based on historical incidents that have occurred in the past.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Budget Vice Chair Nishimoto.
Thank you. One quick question. I was noticing in your budget that you've got about 18 million in lapses. What's the breakdown between, is that vacancy lapses or is that operation?
Primarily because of vacancies, but we are
Can you get me the-
addressing that, and that's been in the past. I believe we are making great strides in reducing our vacancies, and lapsing funds in terms of salaries should lessen over the next couple of years.
Okay.
We do have a plan to reduce it every year by 10%, aggressively reduce it by 10%, in the hopes that we are in the 15% range, knowing that our department does have a unique turnover because of the core services that we provide.
Yeah, I understand that. Can you get me the breakdown on what is salary lapses and what is operational fund lapses?
We can get that to you.
Thank you.
Okay, members, other questions? Chair Waters.
Thank you. Aloha, Director. Good to see you. Just following up on what Councilmember Nishimoto is talking about. So I really think you guys are awesome. Like, you do such good work. And whenever any of us ask for help in our district, you guys are right there. Appreciate it. That's why I feel guilty asking for this. But we might need your help again. And that's because, and I've been talking about this, I probably sound like a broken record. I'm trying to find money to lower the cost of the sewer fees. And ultimately, your members will benefit not having to pay one $400 water bill. Yeah, so don't have to answer it today, but to the extent that we can work together to find savings where we could, just this year, we'd take them 1 year at a time, but just this year where we could find some savings that we could dedicate, and I'm asking every department to do so, that we could dedicate to that sewer bill so that, you know, our residents don't have to bear that huge burden. But hopefully we can work together. And in the past, we've asked you guys for help on the budget, and you guys came through, and that's why I feel guilty asking again. But if
That's part of our job. that is part of my job to try and fulfill the needs of your constituents. And we have worked very well with the council members, and we will continue to work with the council members to try and provide those services that you're asking for. Thank you,
Awesome.
Chair.
And of course, we don't want to take away from the good work that you're doing. That is just that if there's a little bit extra on them, that you guys not going to fill these positions. If we could cocoa or cockroach some of that money. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councilmember Kiana.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I want to say, what a fabulous picture on the presentation. It's so shocking.
That is
I wonder whose district
all the
this
props
is.
to our administrative staff right here. Yeah.
Trebon. Okay, so I didn't see anything on federal funds in this presentation. Is there a reason?
It's because technically right now we don't have any federal funds. We do have one that's pending roughly in the magnitude of 800,000.
800,000 from what agency?
680,000 for from EPA. It was allocated in fiscal year 23. We are in the process of securing that funding, and it will be used towards a Kaka'ako green infrastructure project.
Okay.
That would pay 80%, that would fund 80% of
Got
the
it,
project
got
budget.
it. Okay, because when you had roads and stuff, I just didn't see it, but I was, all of your road funding is coming from the city, correct?
Correct. However, we are investing in staff understanding the grant process. They are
Yes.
currently in training in DC as we speak, and I would like to thank the council member in supporting us to invest in the two staff members to get up to speed in terms of
Okay.
federal grant funding.
Okay, sure. And then if you're not aware, I don't know if it's, I think this is going to supplement your efforts, that as you know, I said that I was working with the Managing Director's Office and Budget and Fiscal Services on identified agencies that will have a federal grants planner, and yours would be one of them. I do believe that there is a lot of room for you to be able to secure federal funding separate from what's going on, yeah? Just because of your kuleana. I am aware that there is a pending congressional request for Kauai Nui, I'm not Kauai Nui, but for Kailua, is that correct? Randall, with Senator Hirono, is that pending? Is that, are we going to get it, or is it because the process hasn't triggered because of the continuing resolution fiasco that we're in?
Sorry, introducing Randall Wakamoto, Program Administrator for our Stormwater Quality Division. Thank you very much for the comment, Councilmember Kiana. But yes, we do have a application. It hasn't been formally approved. It's still going through the process. It's under the FY 2025 federal fund.
And how much is that?
That's for 650,000.
Oh, that's a lot of money. So you see, that's an example of how you can secure more funding in tandem with the DC lobbyists that will likely be retained in the near future. The whole idea is that departments take the lead as well, which you're doing with training, but we also provide you the resources to strengthen your capacity. And I'm not talking as long as we're here, I'm talking about in the long term. Okay, so that's good to know. And I hope that you guys look at everybody's districts because if the earmark process continues, it's kind of iffy at the moment, but if it does, then you can go and get some funding from each of the senators and each of the members for all of the 9 districts. Okay, so moving on along, I'm appreciative that the director knows how important community engagement is, yeah? And I don't need to rehash my concern over a project in Kailua, but I would like to ask you this. Who is your public information officer?
We have Bill Powers from CSD that
I'm sorry, what is
supports
that?
Customer Service Department. Bill Powers, William Powers, he has been part of the process in terms of the upcoming town hall for next month.
Oh, but I'm sorry, he's not your employee, he's from
No,
community?
there are certain departments that do not have a dedicated PIO. At this point, we don't believe DFM requires a dedicated PIO.
Oh, okay, so I clearly would disagree with that and believe that you need a public information officer or someone to engage with the community. So I need to let you know that I know none of us here disagrees that you guys work very, very hard. And you guys know, I know all of you, greatly appreciative. Having said that, just because of the type of work you do, it's so important to have that community engagement lens. And the reason is then you don't have pilikia, right? So what is, sometimes when we provide the funding and you guys are used to implement it, if it's disconnected, it's not good for any of us. So I just need to let you know all departments need one because they need to help you. Your job is your mission at hand, within the scope of your work. Their job is to help you in whatever you guys are trying to do externally because in addition to E&V and the wastewater, didn't you guys have also a planned stormwater fee, you guys? Am I wrong?
You're
Stormwater
correct.
utility, is that your department?
You are certainly correct.
Okay, well, let me tell you. That's one big issue, right? You guys are going to fight for it on your own. So I'm just trying to tell you that I think that you guys would warrant one. And I don't know, that should be an administration priority for all of the agencies because you need help. That's all. So that's all my questions. Want to thank you guys.
Thank you, Council
for all
Member.
that you guys do. And I'm looking forward to the Kailua Stormwater Management Town Hall. I've identified April 8th or I believe the 23rd. We're just working with Kailua Intermediate School. And so thank you guys all for what you guys do.
We are actually looking forward to that town hall. I believe, as you mentioned, we have not engaged as well as we possibly could. I have challenged this department to understand that that is part of our role as a services department. And
Okay, good to hear. And you will support my position for federal grants planner, correct?
that is correct.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, members, any other questions? Okay, and of course, we have the opportunity to submit questions in writing. I will have a few about the timelines for filling potholes, repairing streetlights, and sidewalks, which in the performance metrics were below expectations. So, all right. Well, this brings us to the end of the last presentation for today. Again, tomorrow, 9:30, there's a special budget committee meeting for the Komohale West Lock Rental Housing Project. And then at 10 o'clock, DHR, Enterprise Services, DDC, Environmental Services, Customer Services, plus the legislative budget. There being no further business, this meeting is adjourned. It's 4:10. Thanks, everyone.